clear. No curve, no spinning sphere. Yeah, I know the truth is hard to take. But observe the surface of the lake. I don't take your time no more. If you're confused by what I'm saying, and I won't waste my life for sure. If you're asleep to what I'm laying on you, on you. This cult we're born into has brainwashed me and you. Now as foundations crack, it's time to take it back. But I see it's hard to find its fake. But I trust the stillness of the lake. So I won't bake your brain no more. If you're confused by what I'm saying, and I won't waste my life for sure. If you're asleep to what I'm laying on you, on you. I won't steal your time no more. If you're afraid of what I'm saying, I won't waste my life for sure. If you're asleep to what I'm laying on you, on you.
Cheers again, Steve Thal, another good one. Excuse me saying to get this up. How we doing? How's it going, everybody? So, again, I'll just say it right now, if you want to join me, you need to send me an email. If anybody that's coming across any of this for the first time, this is just an ongoing investigation into the reality that we all share. Science is not something that belongs to an institution or a group of people or any of that stuff. It's about you, the individual, utilising the same senses that everybody else has, and trying to convey that to your fellow man in regards to claims or things that you think you've found about the objective reality. So first and foremost, you have to start from that. There's a lot of propaganda attachments that are thrown at people like myself in regards to particular modelling of what a flat earth concept may be. That's not how it works, and a lot of that's just blatant dishonesty to discredit and obviously to give the globe cult some sway in regards to having an argument with a discerning skeptic. So my starting position is very simple. It's my experience that I live upon a plane. There is no curvature to that plane. Standing bodies of water do not curve. The water finds its level. And that's pretty just a simple, I'm not going to get into the full details of the heliocentric jargon right here and now. You'd need to troll through, other videos and listen to other discussions about it. But as I said before, I'm going to compile a lot of it into, short, easy to digest videos. So as anybody should be starting, if you're going to engage in this, what you have to do is you have to remove any bias or preconceived notions, assumptions that you may hold to be true, and you have to start from the very beginning. Now, anybody that's honest enough would say the same as me. You don't experience the earth moving or curving in any way, shape or form. So anybody that wants to tell you that what is the earth is something contrary to your experience, they have a heavy burden upon them, because as far as I'm concerned, it's an extraordinary claim. And I can go so far, because I've been involved in it for so long and looking at it, and make the statements that the globular earth concept is just that. It is a concept, and it is an absurd concept. It is contrary to anything you can experience in your immediate reality. It is contrary to any practical references or demonstrations you can perform yourself in regards to certain substances and their behaviours and interactions with each other. Or the globe earth is, as I say, a concept that is backed by an image on the TV and sophisticated language, which is not really that sophisticated. It's just, made complex to try and bamboozle you. If you ask the majority of people, do you believe the earth's a globe, and you ask them why they believe it's a globe, 95% of the time the answer you're going to get is because that's what they were told, that's what they've seen on the TV. And recently, as I've highlighted before, but again recently, you can see that very evident when you speak to real people, on the street. And a lot of the times now what I'm seeing is that people have that honesty, which again, is a testament to the method that you use to try and bring this topic of discussion to them, and how you convey that to them. Because if you can lead them into a certain position by getting them to agree upon what they experience in their immediate reality, then it leaves them with a conundrum. As I pointed out the last time, you've now got a choice. You've got the choice to commit to your own discernment, your own experience, or you can abandon that in favour of an image, a concept. And again, that's exactly what the globular earth is. It's not a 3D object. So anyhow, as I say, so much propaganda and attachments thrown at people like myself, and I can't be bothered with it. I'm not interested in any of these people that are appearing online because they're dishonest. They are part of a cult and they're hell bent on maintaining the cult belief, while at the same time they make money out of peddling bullshit. So I've not got any time for any of these people. If you're a skeptic, and you're wanting to have an honest discussion, fine, I'm open to that discussion, as long as you're mannered and you don't try any subtle antagonistic behaviours, because I can sniff it out easy, and I'm get zero tolerance for it, and I'm going to shut you down and hammer it immediately. So I'm only interested in you if you're genuine and honest, and I'll sniff it if you're no. Right. So, again, I've come across certain things. I came across a fucking debate that came up in my recommendeds, epic FE debate, Nathan Thompson and Whitsitt versus McToon and Stephen. So while I was training earlier, I had a wee listen to some of it, and there was a couple of bits in it, you know, some bits I can see the right approach and whatever else. And again, I'm no criticising for the sake of pulling people down here, but you know, I just wish a lot of the time that people would hammer in certain points when they're brought up to them. So one of the first ones I'm gonna focus on right now is a thing that they talk about in regards to atmospheric pressure, and I've said this again till I'm blue in the face. You know, a globe proponent, or you know, here's the thing. Again, we base things on what we can, you know, test, what we can demonstrate to ourselves here. So when we look at the heliocentric model, they're trying to propose that, you know, the Earth exists in a medium that is a vacuum, and between each object, or you know, a planetoid, there is a vacuous empty space. Now we exist on this pear-shaped Earth with a gaseous environment, the air that you breathe, and adjacent to that, without any solid membrane, there's supposedly a vacuum. Now, you can go into physical testing yourself to take these claims, and you will see right away that in order to create a vacuum, you need a containment. In order to create any sort of gas pressure, you need a containment. And to have the two of those things side by side, there will always have to be a solid separation, or else you're going to get equilibrium, which means the higher pressure will immediately surge into the low pressure region. So some of the things that the globe proponents will talk about is your pressure gradient. If I go up Ben Lomond, there's less pressure. That means that it's a gradient where it gets to, there's nothing and then it just pops and it's a vacuum. Utter stupidity. I had it again today. Some fucking cretinous moron putting that in a comment under my post about pressure gradients. So here it is again, for the hard of learning, hard of hearing, so that you may get it into your thick fucking skull. When we use things like barometers, it is a measure of weight. If I gave you a situation, as I've stated so many times again, I'm repeating myself, and I get kind of bored of that. If you go into a swimming pool, and you're at the top of the swimming pool, and you go downwards, you will feel an increase in pressure. What's going on is that there's now, as you go down, above you there is now more mass, creating a greater pressure, weight upon you, and you will feel it. The same is true with air. Okay? It's just water in a different state. So when we elevate and we go up the column of mass, the weight decreases. Let me just see if I still got that wee video up there. Oh, yeah. There's a wee minute video I'll share with you. Somebody else explaining it.
Today we're talking about how barometers work. This is an antique banjo barometer, which you might have seen in homes a long time ago in America or across the world. But there are three basic types of barometers: a liquid barometer, a mercury barometer, and an aneroid barometer. An aneroid barometer is the most popular, and that's used by most amateurs. That's what you'll buy in the store the most. And what it is there's a little box made of a metallic substance. It's kind of a combination of beryllium and copper. And as pressure changes, that box will change shape. And essentially all you have to do is connect through a series of gears a little needle, and as the shape of the aneroid capsule changes, that causes the needle to move, and you can actually see it and measure it once you put it on a dial such as this. Now, mercury barometers work by the air pressure, the weight of the air pushing down on a pushing down the air, pushing pressure, the weight of the air pressure, the weight of the air's work by the air pressure, the weight of the air's work by the air pressure, the weight of the air pushing down on a vial of mercury. Inside that vial, in the middle of it, there's a tube that's filled with mercury. As the air pressure pushes down on the vial of mercury, what happens is the pressure goes up, it causes the mercury to rise up in the tube, and that causes the reading to go up. All air pressure is the weight of the air pushing down. When we have high pressure, reading to go up. All air pressure is the weight of the air pushing down up. All air pressure is the weight of the air up. All air pressure is the weight of the air pushing down. When we have high pressure, that causes more weight to be pushing down on the ground, and that causes the readings to go up. Generally, you have pretty weather like we have here today. When the pressure is falling, the air is rising. That means there's less pressure being put on the ground, or in the case of a mercury barometer, there's less pressure being put on the mercury in the vial, so the pressure drops on the inside.
So that's just one of the points that I continually see being, misunderstood, particularly by globe earth believers, because they're just being disingenuous when they're talking about, they're trying to give you this illusion that it's about, less stuff and eventually it becomes a vacuum and all that stuff. It doesn't matter how high you go, there'll still be air up there. It's just that it's under a different pressure, right? Because there's less above it bearing down on top of it. Now, the other aspect of, the globular earth belief is that they have serious problems, because they want to talk then again about, how all this air is held onto the earth by pulling forces and all this rubbish. Now, as I've established so many times before, pull is only a descriptor of a direction. So you bring something closer to you, you would describe it as pull. The mechanisms of motion are applied pressure. Something has to press on something else. Okay? Now, again, it's abundantly obvious how absurd and stupid some of the notions that these people have are. As I've shown you before, look, I can demonstrate it as I done the other day with the helium balloon. We understand that we've got a density band of air. Now, I'm going to get to this whole density and buoyancy thing again, because another one came up and people are still rattling on about density and buoyancy. Density and buoyancy explains why things go down. No, it doesn't. Right? But the globular earth is a real problem in that regard, and how pressure is held, and also why we have density layerings. Why does a helium balloon go up the way? So, for me, as I said so many times before, again, what we have, we exist within a band of the most compressed air, right? And there's a certain density to that. So when we have a helium balloon and we let it go, there's a less density to the helium balloon, and there's an upward force that causes the helium balloon to go up the way. Okay, so just before I jump onto this density and buoyancy, you really need to understand that when they're bringing that shite up, and the reason I'm doing this is because if you're going to get involved in debates and you're going to speak to people about it, at least be equipped in order to highlight them and pull them up on their fallacies, their absurdities. Okay, so the fact that you go up a mountain and there's less pressure doesn't lend weight to the fact that they want to claim that there's a vacuum adjacent to a gaseous environment. Right? It's only a measure of the mass, the weight bearing down. As you move up the column, just as I was saying about the water, dive down in the water, the pressure increases. Come back up, it decreases. Now when you're right near the surface, say an inch from the surface, and you take a cubic measurement from there, right? There's no any less or more water there than there is at the very bottom. It's just that the two are under different conditions. One's under a greater pressure than the other. Doesn't mean that there's no water as you reach the surface. That's how absurd it is. If you started your measurement, your device at the bottom of a fucking ocean, you would have to have it really, really precise and know the exact depth that you're going to in order to gauge the thing fully. Now, as you come up from the bottom, you're going to see your wee gauge decreasing in pressure. Do you really think that as you're going up, there's less water? It's the same when you breathe when you go up a mountain. It's not that there's less air. It's just that it's under different conditions. There's less pressure. You are attuned to be living at this sort of altitude. So it takes a while for you to adjust. Density and buoyancy. Density and buoyancy do not answer why we have a particular direction. I'm sick and tired of seeing that in people. Just because something's more dense doesn't give it direction. You let an object go. Now again, when we're talking about gravity, all gravity is a concept, a descriptor of how an object falls. It's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth or any of that. Okay? It's a total separate matter altogether. But again, when people are engaging in these discussions and the topic's brought up, it's the same old fucking rhetoric. Density, buoyancy. How do you get buoyancy and density? Again, I'm going to use the globe scientific instrument. In a three-dimensional space, you get two objects, same dimensions. We just imagine the same dimensions, right? This one here is more dense, right, than this one. That one's not quite as dense as that one, right? Now both the objects are just suspended in three-dimensional space. None of these objects have got a relationship to each other. They have no direction and none of them have weight. They have mass, volume, shape, right? That's it. They have no direction and they have no weight. I need a reference frame that's now in motion. Okay, so again, within this frame of reference, we could fling fucking gas in it. All the gases you want, helium, the whole fucking shebang. You can have liquids in there, you can have gas, you can have whatever you like. Now they're all just suspended in three-dimensional space. The only way to, have relative density and buoyancy is for the reference frame to now move, so that when it moves and it comes into contact, it causes compression. Okay? So if I had two substances, one was more dense than the other one, right, or even under it here, as that starts to move, what's going to happen is, as the compression happens, the more dense material is going to move through the less dense material, and the less dense material is going to be forced upwards, particularly when we're talking about gas. As that reference frame moves, the gas now comes into contact and there's a compression zone closer to the bottom of the reference frame. Okay? Now, I explained this and I demonstrated that you can do it yourself. When we go on a vehicle, we hang plumb lines and we put a helium balloon in it, and you move the vehicle forwards. The plumb line, if you're in a vehicle, there's my shitey motor, right, there you go. So we've got a plumb line hanging from the vehicle and we have a helium balloon attached here. As you move the vehicle in that direction, the helium, the lead weight is going to move towards the back because the material is more dense than the air. The air inside is now being compressed to the back wall, creating a denser layer, which then forces the helium balloon forwards. If I go back again and I say, okay, well, you're talking about density and buoyancy, right? There's an object and it's got a density, right? And then I'll put another object, or I'll put some air here. The two things are just suspended. They don't have direction. Motion is the only thing that can give them direction. So your two options are that you've got some sort of stuff that flows from the top downwards, that presses on everything and creates all the density layers and separates them, or you've got a reference frame that's in uniform motion, towards them. The only way that they're going to get direction and weight is when you have a reference frame that moves towards them, presses on them. Now that you've got a foundation that's something solid, as it presses on these objects, you've got resistance. Now, depending on the rate at which the reference frame is moving is going to determine the weight of the object. You can't just say density creates direction, because it doesn't. And you're not doing the investigation any justice by continually repeating these idiotic fucking mantras. You're a wee bit suspicious of all these people that keep pumping that same bullshit, because it's just not the truth. If you don't understand that, it's no my fucking problem. Right? Running about, repeating the same garbage over and over again, it's not going to do any justice. This is why these people feel they've got the upper hand and they can keep invoking their gravity push. As I've said to you so many times, you can just invert it and say that it's the earth that's moving. The maths works out the exact fucking same. How are we doing? That's exactly it, Steve HV. You know, our body's a pressurised system too, so when we rise higher, our body's trying to find the equilibrium. It's the same if you put yourself inside a vacuum chamber. You know, you can see what starts to happen. Because, you know, again, people, you know, overlook pressure and temperature because they play a massive, massive role. When we're talking about motion and acceleration and force, what we're talking about is an applied pressure. Acceleration, motion require a force. The force is, if you go to mainstream, they'll tell you that a force can be intuitively described as a push or a pull. Now, they're just descriptors of direction. I brought something closer to me, I pulled it. The only way we move anything is by pressing on it. You either alleviate pressure in some way or you apply more pressure and you'll get movement. When we're talking about gas, you can create movement and motion by temperature. If you increase the temperature, you're going to expand the gas. You cool it, it's going to contract. And that's what we live in. That's what weather systems are. But again, when we get back to the claim, we've got a pressurised gaseous environment adjacent to a vacuum. We know it's utter pish because reality and demonstration will show you that. And again, you're back to the same conundrum. Do you throw out every single demonstration that you can ever achieve in favour of an image? Now remember, only in this image, in this belief system, is it contrary to what you can demonstrate. So in every single, you know, aspect, we need containment. We want to create higher pressures, we need a containment. You want to make lower pressure, you need containment. The two varying systems need to be separated and isolated, or you'll have an equilibrium. 100% of the time, demonstrable fact. But people are going to throw that out, and the globular earth just gets a bye, just because there's sophisticated language and wee guys on the TV showing you a fucking image. Bloody sticker in water. Neil Williams, John McVeigh, Gideon Sick, Steve HV, FPV Angel. High and low pressure, what is the switching mechanism? What is the cause? Pressure fluctuations are due to temperature. Riddle me this, perfection, cause, have no sphere, R Green, Dusty 101, Andrew Marshall, TP in a tree, Indigo Pilgrim, Bill, how's it going? Get it up you with your fucking sunshine speak, you're just here to fucking throw me, you bastard. Hope it burns you to a fucking crisp or something. All we've got is fucking another 2 weeks of pissing down to look forward to. Fills me with joy. People keep going on about me moaning about it. I don't give a fuck. I do not give a fuck. It massively affects me. And I'm going to moan about it. Don't like it. Fuck off. Stuart Lundy, how's it going, mate? Selling Ellie in the West Coast Wisdom, hello there. I meant to actually text you back, I totally forgot about it. Guns of Navarone, one man, he's Detector. World Without Curve, Terry Hayes. Sammy Shaw, how's it going? Russell Western, Dusty 101, Tony Dixon, Guns of Navarone, Matthew C4, Mike White, Sean McElwee, Flat Earth Banner, Tom Gothier, Party Pack, Husky Warriors, Ute, Dinar, Cause, Neil Williams, hello everybody, how's it all going? So, again, as I say, I'm going to see what happens in the future with these Saturday things. When I've not really got anything to say, I'm just not going to come on. So, I'll keep offering the live, the open platform whenever I'm on a Saturday. If you want to join me, you need to send me an email. I had somebody earlier, guy that's been commenting, the guy called Dave Brisbane, that says he was going to come on, had something to say. So, in fact, Dave Brisbane's here. David Brisbane, I'm going to send you a link right now because I've not really got anything else to say. You need to send an email if you want to join me. Whoever it is that's calling, you need to send an email. So, this is a thing with the globe. It doesn't have any demonstrations, it's only got language. You need to send me an email if you want to join me, you daft. Send that. David Brisbane, the link sent. Alan Blair, you want to go a run through Pollock Park? It's very enticing, Alan. What else has been happening? I'm thinking on starting up a different channel. And doing some live stuff from that, but the problem will be, I think YouTube now are not letting you go live unless you've got 1,000 subscribers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up maybe tomorrow or Monday, and I'll stick it on here. And if I can get enough subscribers to it, then I can start doing different lives. I just want to talk about various different stuff in regards to, being a human being, from relationships to, all sorts of different aspects of lived life. As I said so many times before, for me it's very simple. People that are engaged in society, who they think they are, what they think they're doing, they're just all ideas and concepts, because human beings don't have a grounding. They don't know where they are, they don't know why they're here, they don't know what they're a part of, what the purpose is, if there is a purpose, and again, talking about purpose and meaning and all this stuff. I think a lot of that's just desperation. People will attach to anything that they think gives them certainty and meaning and all that stuff that warms their fuses. You don't know where you are, you don't know why you're here, so what the fuck are you up to? But there's still complexity, and there's things that I think we can look at and tear apart in regards to everyday interactions and things that we get involved in. And I want to do that somewhere different. So I'll get a phone for next weekend. We'll get a phone number back up here on the screen so that you've got that option to call in. Your channel will be removed very soon because your threats of violence and doxing, whatever. Who did I dox? Who did I threaten violence to? Shut up, snowflake. So you see these people talking about, again, they'll laugh at practical demonstrations. Somebody says that water can conform to a ball, so you demonstrate that water can't conform to the exterior of shapes and objects, and they'll laugh and say, you used a soccer ball, ha ha. They love to laugh at practical demonstrations, but the very same cheek, and you'll say, what's gravity? And they'll come out with all this fantastical gibberish, and then they'll get a piece of lycra or spandex and put it over a fucking drum and drop a pebble in it and say, bending the warp in a space times, this. Or present to you some plastic fucking toy representation of their idiotic concept. Hello? Or present to you some plastic fucking toy. David.
Hello?
David, you need to turn the YouTube down. Just mute the YouTube video. You done it? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
How are you doing, Dale?
You can hear me alright, aye?
Ah, yes.
Right, cool. How's it going?
How's the weather there?
Pish.
Still grey carpet.
It's utter shite, mate. Utter shite.
That's why I left.
Aye.
I looked up at the sky for 6 weeks and goes, where's the sun?
Aye. Fucking right, man. Fucking first opportunity I get, I'll be out of here.
I remember in 1982 sitting in a computer training course and saying, I'm leaving. And I applied to migrate to Australia, and then I came, so that was fine. But I spent 10 years in Asia working there. But yeah, I do miss the people in the bars. My dad used to live in Paisley, so.
Oh, nice.
Nice
one.
So I've been watching your show for a while. I mean, I do quite like some of your ideas, but I disagree with most of them. But I do like the way of thinking. So I thought I'd actually give you a call because I do put a lot of what you would call spam comments, and which I think are reasonable and fair. But I can take your point of view that you're sick of it, right? So I thought I'd actually call you.
Well, at least you've got the bottle to do that, mate. The majority of these people don't. But just get back a wee minute. My ideas. I mean, can you give me one specific idea that I've offered? Because again, I'm open. I'm just a skeptic. I'll talk about varying things, but I don't subscribe to, like spiritual concepts or ideas or.
Me neither. I mean, there might be a God, but really, in the probability wise, it's zero. I mean, it's like you could list all the other ways of why the universe might be here that no one can prove forever, right?
Exactly.
Everybody could.
I just find it inconceivable, and for me, in an intellectual level, I can look about me and say, well, we've got complexity, we've got information, we've got systems like that. For me, the probability of it coming from nothing, which if you don't invoke some sort of deliberate intent behind reality and life, then the only way you're going to end up is at a place of no thing. Now, for me, I just can't go there, because to contemplate no thing with no intentionality or any of that stuff can somehow manifest matter, material, information, life. I think that's totally ridiculous. But
I think a lot of these things actually are very difficult to understand. I mean, if you think about a human being, and when they discovered like quantum mechanics, allegedly, like in the early 20s, nobody could believe it. I mean, even the best scientists in the world couldn't believe that this could possibly be true, right? How could something be in two places at one time, right? In fact, if you look at these Feynman diagrams, it's everywhere in the universe, an electron as it moves from a capsule to somewhere. I mean, this is all unbelievable.
But I spent a few years listening to these people, and Feynman was the one that made the penny drop, because Feynman made a statement at the end of a 6-hour fucking lecture that I had spent all that time trying to understand. And at the end of it, he says, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand it. And then from there I started to go, wait a minute, and I went back through it and I went, that's a drawing, conceptual drawing, this is stuff on black, but where's the stuff? Where's the actual stuff? And it doesn't exist. So, again, it's just part of this, idiocy of trying to get to the, what is matter and what's right at the base of it, and, they're just coming up with all this gibberish,
It's hard to accept that you're a human being. It really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, but then again, he did get he did get a Nobel Prize for his work in electroquantum dynamics, right? Mm-hmm. His Feynman diagrams are great.
Yeah.
I mean, help people understand, if you believe it, how subatomic particles will transform into others.
I mean,
and his integral is great too for. But I mean, you then have to assume that an electron is everywhere in the universe, right? As it moves from point A to point B, and it could be anywhere in there, and it suddenly just materializes as soon as you have a detector at the other end. It's the only place it can be.
But
it's really difficult to grasp. I mean, when you think of it that way.
That's all the pish of, you need an observer, and the observer collapses the wave function and yada yada. As I said so many times before, if I've got a newborn babies die in car accidents quite a lot of the time, it happens. These newborn babies don't have the function of the eye or the senses. They don't have any rationale. They have no way of processing or fully understanding what's going on. And they're still subject to physical material interaction. So I don't buy into all that pish. If I'm not looking at it, it doesn't exist. I mean, it's fucking gibberish.
I know it is hard, but then again, mathematically it all works, right? So,
but mathematically mathematics is a language. So because it works mathematically, doesn't mean to say it has a relationship to actual reality. But I think for me that's part of what's happened, and mainstream science has been hijacked with that type of thinking, that mathematics has become the idol, the god that supersedes everything else, and it's just not the case, because we can see what's happening with that. It's been manipulated, and because a concept can be created and works as a concept, people then take that to mean that it's got a relationship to actual physical reality, when it just doesn't.
Well, it is. If you look at, actually, is just a model, right? In quantum mechanics, they don't know. I mean, they've done experiments that show that when they do the computations, yes, they do find the particles, right? But the model for how they get the answer, right, is still just a model, right? It doesn't mean it's actually doing that.
No, exactly.
But when you apply that model on a probabilistic basis, you get the right answer, right? And the fact it's one of the most successful one of the most successful branches of physics has ever been, right? They've measured it to so many decimal places, and yet no one can understand why. Why does the particles believe this way? I mean, it's totally counter to human intuition, right?
Well, if there's some sort of practical reference that's ascribed to these models and these descriptions, then I'm always willing to look at it.
No, it's a bit in between, Dale. It's a bit where they've got the setup, and this is all real, right? And streaming electrons coming out, and they've got the other bit with the detector at the other end, right? And they're measuring them. Did it come to one or both detectors, or which one did it go to, and all that? It's all the bit in between.
This is the thing.
A model.
But this is the thing, right? They don't know what something is, and they make something to detect it. So there's where I have a problem. How are you making this mechanism of detecting something that you don't even know what it is?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. But the reason why they did that is because they started looking from same with waves going through diffracting through grids, diffraction grids, and all that, Young's diffraction grids, and he thought we'll do the same thing with an electron, right? Mm-hmm. It turns out the properties of a wave, and he goes, "How's this possible?" Right?
Oh, so, wave particle duality.
Any of this.
I don't subscribe to all that wave particle duality bullshit, you know. But anyway, I don't really want to digress into, you know.
Yeah, but I really only come on to. I mean, I've looked at a lot of things, and we would disagree about a lot of things. So it would just be no, I don't agree. But I actually had one question.
Dave, let's
main question, which I sent to you in advance because I don't want to blindside you.
No, but let's just establish a couple of things first and foremost. So in order for me to take you as an honest man, you know, I've got my criteria as a sentient being living in a physical reality. So, you know, for me, any claims that are being made, the only way to substantiate a claim is to give me the practical reference for it. And if I don't have a practical reference, I can't entertain what you're offering me. And hopefully, you know, you if you can agree or you can disagree with that position, you can let me know right now so that we know each other's.
I'm only going to talk about something I can. I'm only going to talk about something I can see, but not as in the email we discussed.
But
so we should both, if we both experience reality the same way, then I'm expecting you to see this phenomena the same way as me.
So you understand? You understand that, you know, when we can only see something, then, you know, what is that? Because vision, if it's only a visible phenomena, it's under the geometry of vision. Do you accept that?
Oh yeah. Unless you use you know, high-powered binoculars and telescopes, right? Then you can.
But binoculars and telescopes are just extensions of vision. It's only a visible world. You know, you understand that the world that we move around in 3 dimensions is different to how we perceive it through our vision.
Yeah, of course, because if you hold your hand out like this and you make it like a 50p piece, if you still got them in Britain, that's all a human eye can focus on at a point in time. So when you see everything round about you, you're not actually seeing that. You're only seeing this much. Yeah. Your brain is filled in everything else, the non-moving parts. So it actually carries its own reality around with it. Yeah. Like a bull in a china shop. You think of it that way, I mean, you're not actually seeing everything you think you're seeing for a start, right? You're only seeing it, you can only focus on this much.
Yeah, what I was getting at as an example was, you know, you understand, you look along a train track or you look along a long street, things appear to get smaller, parallel lines appear to converge, yada yada. So my point is that, you know, in vision, that's the geometry of vision, because the real world, if I measure the street that I'm looking down or I measure the train tracks, they do not converge.
Right. I've got that one. Euclid's fifth postulate, right? You know, parallel lines intersect only infinity, right? Although when you look at the train lines, they look as though they do go to a point, right, if they're far enough away. So I know, I understand that.
Right.
I mean, but I would say put train tracks up at 3,000 feet and then build them out for, was it 12 hours? Does it reaches the horizon, right? My answer to that one is no, it doesn't. It's 19 degrees above the horizon. So I've computed that, but then again, there is assumptions there. Why is the sun at 3,000? Why is it going a circle? Is it going at a constant speed? You can build all these in, but here's
the thing, Dave. I just need to interrupt you because that's none of the claims are here at this platform. I don't claim anything about the sun or the luminaries or.
Oh, no, I understand that. I mean, I don't accept your position that looking at the sun can't tell you anything about the Earth, because any fact that you can use in an argument, if it's valid, right, makes sense to me to use, right.
But
So just
but
because it appears to be tangential to the issue many times, because I mean, full disclosure, I've got a degree in maths. For many times when you make an assumption, you know, you're just trying to build your case from it, and you'll come to a conclusion, and then anywhere along that assumption line,
Well,
if
that's
you
it.
start, your conclusion's wrong, right?
Of course,
So if
because when it
oh,
comes to
I've done this computation, right?
But when it
And
comes
then
to Dave,
yeah,
Dave,
what assumptions?
Dave, exactly. What's your presuppositions about these apparent objects? That's the whole problem. You know, people are making assumptions and presuppositions about these apparent objects, and that's where I have a problem. How did you establish it? You didn't establish it, so it can't go any further. And, you know, for somebody to say and assert to me that you can establish the dimensions of what I'm standing on by apparent objects above my head, I find absolutely absurd.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, the thing is, I really don't want to talk about that today, because I do have a burning question, right,
for
which
it.
is actually based on observable things. So my question was, because I remembered you at Largs once looking out at the sea, and I remember that one because I had just come back from Britain. I'd actually been to that chip shop down there at Largs, and they do serve fantastic fish and chips.
Yeah.
Of course, you'll never get a seat there because of the old buddies down there.
Right.
Forced me off the seat, looking at you. Why are you sitting on those seats? But then you looked out at the sea, right, where the Irish Sea, I guess it is, and you looked across the horizon and you said, "Well, there's a hump there. No, there should be a hump." Well, there shouldn't be a hump there. If you're looking across it, if you're looking out towards it, there should be a hump, right? But if you look across it, the mass on that one is much less humpy, let's put it that way. So it looks flat. Now, it looks flat, so you could, one conclusion you could come to, maybe it is flat, right? And maybe it's flat everywhere, right? These are reasonable. But when I thought about it later, not then, was when you look at it, see, and I saw a horizon which looks like the sea meeting the sky, apparently meeting it, right? It looks discernible, right? And, you know, like it looks distinct, discernible. And if you had binoculars and you looked out, you would just see it in a bit more detail. I mean, if you had powerful enough ones, you might actually be able to see waves that look like the ocean going up and down, right? A really powerful telescope and such like. So then my question was, if the world was flat, right, there shouldn't really be a horizon. You should just be able to see it like hundreds of kilometers into it, right? Like what is it they call themselves?
No, Dave, no. First and foremost, I'm just going to add in my wee bit here. Now, that apparent thing that we call the horizon, because it's just part of vision, right? It's not something that's actually happening, can change depending on the conditions. So you understand that you can stand at the shore one day and it appears to be 3 miles away. You can stand at the shore the next day and it appears to be 12 miles away, right? So, you know, again, we have to understand that we're talking about vision and there's different factors coming into account. The horizon's only an apparent thing, it's not a physical thing. So where do we go to look at that? We go to the eyes because it's a function of vision. You know, just as you say, you're asserting that if it was a flat earth, you know, we're talking, you know, perfectly flat, you're asserting that there shouldn't be a horizon, right? But what you're admitting, Dave...
Distinct one. It shouldn't be a distinct one. It should... My thoughts was the ocean would just blur into the atmosphere, right? And you can see that when you have bad weather, actually, just down at Largs.
That's it.
You go, where did the horizon go? Right, it's gone, right. So like in a perfectly calm day where refraction is not playing any huge part, right? I mean, if you're down long enough, you can pick a lot of observations on it, right? So why is it on quite a lot of days, especially the ones with no refraction, it does look as though it's discernible, right? I'm not saying how far away it is, and I'm not saying it's real. It just looks discernible, right?
So this is what I'm trying to establish with you, Dave. Is that a geometry of the real world, the physical three-dimensional world, or is it part of vision, the geometry of vision?
No, well, you're definitely seeing it, right?
Right, so, but what I'm trying to establish with you, Dave, I spoke to a boy outside Glasgow University about the very same thing and he had a breakdown. So what I'm trying to ask you is in your mind, do you think that that's a property of the three-dimensional tangible reality, or is it a property of your vision?
I think we're seeing something, and it's part of the world.
You think that's the world?
Yes.
And
Just
how-
like if you looked at you could look at an edge of a hill, right? I mean, you'd see the edge of the hill, right, and you'd think, yeah, that's part of it. You can't see behind it. I mean, you don't even know where the hill is. It's just a shape, right? But then if you didn't know what a hill was, if you just woke up yesterday and
So
looked
Dave,
out,
Dave, if we look, if we had a squared corridor and we're looking down the squared corridor, just as we spoke about earlier on with the train tracks, Dave, are you then going to say that it's part of the real world, that the floor rises up, the ceiling comes down, and the walls are all converging to a point? Do you think that that's the real world, that the hallway is actually geometrically like that?
that goes to a point, Bill, right?
But
the
Dave,
horizon isn't a point.
But what I'm trying to establish with you, Dave, is it a property of the real world or a property of vision? When we look down the hallway, the floor comes up, the walls come in, and the ceiling comes down, and they all seem to converge to a point. Is that a property of the physical hallway, or is it a property of how you view it with your eyes?
It's how you view it with your eyes.
So
in
why
that
is it
case.
why is it different then when we're talking about looking at the horizon, Dave?
Because you made that the horizon it appears to be a line across it, right? Which you can see across it. You're not
Appears.
looking down.
It appears
to
to
a
be.
point.
It appears to be.
Yeah, but I mean it's a definite line, right? I mean it's got several degrees, 15, 30 degrees.
Where's
You
the
can see-
properties of this line, Dave? Where's
I
the
think analogy is
Dave?
not the same.
Dave, you're mixing up stuff here. So if it's got properties, where is the properties of this line?
Well, you said it's got properties.
No,
said
you
it's
just
there.
said it. You said it's a property
No,
of the real
no,
world.
it's there.
It's there.
It's there. That is there.
What is it? What is it that you're seeing?
Exactly. That's my question.
Oh, this is the
What are you looking
investigation.
at?
But this is the investigation, Dave. So you know,
I think it is the edge of the ocean, right?
you
But
think
what it's looking at-
so are you so if you're standing looking out at the beach, are you then thinking that the water's kind of ramping up into the centre of your field of view and then curving away,
No, it doesn't do that. You're standing above it.
right? But it appears to come into the centre of your vision.
I see that's vision, right? Making you think that, right?
Right. So Dave, you're just cherry picking here. What I'm trying
no,
to what I'm trying to
I
point, Dave, what I'm trying to point out here is that you're talking about visible phenomena. So when we're talking about purely visible phenomena, it's the geometry of vision that we're discussing. We're not talking about the three-dimensional real world.
Explain what? I mean, I understand when you look down the corridor, right? So can you explain why you see the line across the horizon then? A line that's at 90 degrees to where you're looking, right? It's not you looking down at like in perspective. You're looking at this thing has got
hang
you
on,
can probably see 120 degrees this
Hang
time,
on,
right?
hang on, right, Dave, because you brought up a hill, a physical hill, right? Now, in the globular Earth, it has to be a physical hill, right? Because it's a geometry of a sphere that it goes downwards at a way.
Actually, I was thinking the edge of the hill there, Bill, looking
Right.
at the edge.
But a sphere, it's not an edge, you know, it's a continuum of one surface. So it's an exponential curve that goes away from your feet. Okay, so if me and you went to the beach, you would say, okay, that horizon thing, that's the edge, that's the earth that's blocking anything beyond that. Now that must
Actually, I'm not even saying that, Bill. I'm not even going that far in the argument.
right.
I'm only saying I can see a discernible horizon, right? And then my argument then is I don't think I'd be able to see it if the earth was flat. That's all. There's no claim about the shape of the earth other than I don't think I'd be able to see if the earth was flat. That's my only claim.
Dave, if me and you are standing on a perfectly levelled floor and we've got perfectly, parallel walls and a ceiling that's parallel with the floor, right? The floor appears to rise up in front of us. The walls appear to converge and the ceiling appears to come down the way. That's
Don't
apparent.
disagree with that. Don't disagree with that.
Right.
It's just different from looking
Right.
at the ocean.
So how are you in your reasoning accounting for your vision when you're looking out at the world and you think you're talking about this her apparent straight line.
Apparent discernible horizon, right?
But that's the word. It's apparent.
that's
It's not a
what it
physical
would be.
thing. It's not a physical thing, Dave. It's an apparent thing that's a property of your vision.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, we don't know it isn't physical. I mean, if you go into fantasy land and thought you did live on a sphere, you would think it would be the edge of the ocean. This would be an obvious
Dave,
conclusion.
but Dave-
let's say you don't know that.
Dave-
let's say you're
Dave,
looking
listen,
at it and
listen.
you ask yourself, what is it?
But listen, Dave, I've done the testing. I've observed the natural phenomena in the real world, the thing that we call water. And I made predictions and I made some changes to the variables and blah blah. And what I established is that water can only take the shape of the container. Water cannot conform to the exterior of shapes and objects. The surface will form an equilibrium, the lowest potential energetic state, which is a horizontal plane. Now, any standing body of water demonstrably displays that on the surface. Now, when we go and look at the ocean, I don't ever think in my mind, oh, that water's curving away from me, because that's preposterous, Dave. Because reality, testable reality. Look.
I never said it's curving away. I just said, what's the explanation for the discernible horizon? And I don't think it means the Earth's flat, that's all. I'm not saying it's a sphere. I'm not even saying what's causing
Well,
it.
that's fine if we're just asking questions. That's what we're asking. We're investigating, we're asking questions, and what we're having to deal with is people that are making assertions about it. So that's why I'm being a bit, what's the word? Stern or picky with you, because I don't want us to keep talking past each other, because this is what continually happens.
This is why I wanted to talk to you about this very specific phenomena in reality, right? No, sure, your eyes are involved in being tricked and all that, but it is a concern, right? That you should, in my opinion, you should be able to see hundreds of kilometers through the atmosphere, because people have actually taken pictures
Dave,
450 kilometers away.
But this is the thing, we're right at the floor, and we've got a compressed zone of more dense air. You understand that? It's more compressed, right? So it's denser, right? So there's issues there to deal with.
This is true. Refracted is always a problem. How high off you are the ground, then where you are, what temperature, superior, inferior mirages and all that, and then blooming, whatever that is, right? Which I hear rant on about, right? But it's totally unconvincing. But so it's just like that. I mean, like, you could say, oh yeah, this is gravity, this is this. You can pull out lots of models and say, yeah, it conforms to the model. But this thing in reality, of all the things I've seen, right? I mean, you would say, well, this is really difficult to explain on a flat Earth. Is my point, right? It doesn't mean the Earth the Earth's curved either, because you can't actually see the curve, right? So how could you jump to that conclusion,
Well,
right?
see,
It looks horizontal.
See, getting back to your statement that you made about being able to see further. Well, I made a video about this. See if the Earth was actually a globe, at the circumference that they tell you. You've got these people who will show you images and videos saying that something's being cut off from the bottom, and they'll show you anywhere from 15 miles to 20 miles to 30 miles, right? Now, here's my thing. If the Earth really was a globe of that circumference, nothing would be obscured for 50 miles, 60 miles, 70 miles, 80 miles, 100 miles, because you would have to have the floor rising up in front of your view and then curving down. If I look down a slope, an exponential slope at that rate, I can see much further than what they're suggesting. So for these people to continually suggest that things are being cut off from the bottom because of an Earth curve at 15 and 20 miles is totally absurd. If the Earth really was a sphere, as I elevate up, that horizon must remain fixed, because in the globular Earth model, the horizon's a fixed geometry. It's where the sky and the Earth appear to meet, and that's the curvature of the Earth. So if you pinpoint that and then I elevate up, that must remain fixed, which means I should be looking down at it and I should be seeing further down the slope of the Earth. But that's no reality. Me and Dan went to Largs again, and what we done is we set up a tube, okay, on a frame, and we put the camera there levelled so that we had the apparent horizon, the line intersecting the centre of the tube, the circular tube, okay. That was at sea level. Then we went up 250 feet and we done the same thing. The horizon still intersected the centre of the tube. So what I'm showing is that if it's a geometric sphere, that must remain fixed. As I elevate up, it can't rise up with me. It must stay down there, which means the higher I go, the more angle I would have to be looking down at it. But that's no reality.
See, in that experiment you did there, you basically, if I've understood it correctly, think the apparent horizon in both cases is the same distance away.
No, what I'm saying, look, in the globular Earth model, they'll say that ship's going over the curve of the Earth and we'll say it's 15 miles, okay? So if I'm standing at the beach and somebody says the ship's went over the curve, okay, now that point must remain fixed. If I elevate up, my angle must be looking down at that.
Yes. But the problem is that if you look over the ocean with no reference point, right, you don't know if you're still looking at the same point you looked at the first time. With a ship, you have a reference point, right? This is a problem. It's the same reason why if a human being looks at it, say, you can't tell how far it is away without a reference point. It could be 1,000 miles away. It could be 3 miles away, which is what people think it is.
Look at this for an example, Dave, right? Because you see this all the time. So you've got a reference point. There's a horizon, right? Now, there's a sunset. So what we can see is apparently half of a geometry of a sun, right? So that's my reference point. Now, if I'm standing here looking at that and somebody asserts that the sun's going down, right? That means that as I elevate up, I should be looking down and I should see more of the sun, but I'm looking down at the sun.
This is true. You should be.
But
then again, if you just go 100 meters up, right? If you did the maths, the angle would be really, really small. You'd need really sophisticated equipment to see.
What if I go 35,000 feet up?
You should see a difference, yes.
But you don't.
A couple of degrees.
You don't look down at the sun, Dave. Nobody looks down at the sun.
Well, when it's setting, you do.
No, you don't.
Oh, you're right. Of course you're not. You must be looking up at it all the time. If it's above you, you must have to look up, even though it looks like you're looking down.
Well, we've got angular resolution. Things get smaller, and because we are so close to the Earth, you've got a limitation of light getting to the eye. So things are going to get, undiscernible. That's why back in the day, lighthouses were white, right? Because white can reflect, so you can see more of it. If you use different colour variations, you're not going to be able to resolve them.
No, that's true. It's the same as the sky isn't blue, right? It really isn't. It's only blue for human beings. Well, not only human beings, maybe primates. But it actually should be violet if you understand the physics right. But the human brain doesn't see the violet in there because it's even shorter wavelength than blue, right? So it should be scattered more according to Rayleigh scattering. What is 1 over the fourth power of the wavelength, right? Something like that, right? And it's not, we don't see it as violet. It should be, right? But the brain doesn't see it. It's the same for the lighthouse. You look at it, you might not be able to see it. Same as the camouflaging of the soldiers in the desert or the jungle. You just can't see them, right? So, unless they move.
So you understand then that there's something to do with vision and light? Oh,
it definitely is. And the trick is to, if you can, remove the perspective and the vision part away, and see if you can construct the geometry of what you're seeing. Right, that's difficult. I mean, I think I saw Gab had a book once, and he showed us some stuff, and I actually went away and read that book. I found it and downloaded it and read it. Mm-hmm. And in the book it says, perspective is how you see the world, right? And geometry is how the world is. It actually says that in the book that Gav recommended, the 1910 book, right? Some of these old books are quite good, but of course we don't teach children like that anymore, right? It's too exacting to read books like that when you're 10 or 12.
Well, it's people are
wouldn't teach kids now,
Yeah.
That's how they teach them. They don't give you facts and because they think it's just too abstract and difficult for 12-year-olds to grasp now.
Well, I would say it's an agenda to fucking keep people dumb.
Oh, definitely in the world. I would apart from things like flat Earth, which I don't I don't agree with you at all. We definitely are being lied to by our government.
But-
I mean,
but-
over here, we've lost 104 people through COVID-19, and our population's half the size of yours, right? And according to Boris the Clown down here, he's done a wonderful job stopping 500,000 people dying, according to him,
Aye.
right? I mean, I think 40, 50,000 people have needlessly died in Britain through the lies, inaptitude, and hopelessness
Aye.
of the national government. Now, I'd say you can probably trust your local government, right? Mostly when they tell you about your bills and stuff. But the higher up you go in the government, the least you can trust them. This is definitely true.
I don't trust any external authority. That's just me though. I'm my authority, and that's it. I just want to cut back to, you know, you disagree the flat Earth. I don't have a model, Dave, and I'm going to ask you the question: do you experience the Earth as a sphere?
No, never.
What do you experience it as?
It's always flat, stationary.
Right, so that's the starting position. That's where I start from. So anybody that wants to convince me that it's something else, that's their duty to convince me of that.
See, I don't really want to convince you that, Bill, but I just had that interesting question that I thought that wasn't too confrontationist. It didn't say that the Earth had to be a sphere, right? It was something that, because that's what you try and do in mathematics. You say, okay, let's assume the Earth is flat, right? And you go through a series of steps and pick evidence. And if you come to then a conclusion that appears to be a contradiction to known facts, you say, well, the only thing we first assumed was, in this case, the Earth was flat. So it can't be right now. I'm not saying that argument I've got is actually correct. The reason I don't, the Greeks never had this argument. It's never, you know, like you go through the years, nobody's put this argument forward for why, like, because I'll say jokingly, because I'm trying to be respectful to you, when you look out at the sea, right, the fact that the Earth can't be flat is staring you straight in the face, right? I would say, right. Well, I don't know this, right? This is why I'm talking to you, because it's not written in any books anywhere.
But
Aristotle, you know.
But Dave, never mind reciting any of these people. I'm talking about being a direct realist and man to man. For you to, you know, even contemplate that the body of water is rotund and curving down and away from you without flowing, and that the body of water can maintain convexity on the surface is mind-boggling to me. I don't know how you can accept that as a reasonable position.
I'll tell you why. If the theory of gravity is correct, if it is correct, right, and you have, as you said, there's direction, right?
What theory? What theory of gravity? Which theory of gravity?
Well, whichever one you want. You could pick. No, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, as long as v over c is very small, the velocity at which you're moving over the speed of light is very small, it makes no difference. The error term in Einsteinian gravity, when you reduce it to expand the Taylor series, right, is like 1 over c or 1 over c squared, and it makes almost no difference unless you believe you're a satellite in orbit, right? And then it does make a difference to your positioning. But a person just standing on the Earth, not moving, you know, even in Einstein's, you know, 10 tensor equation one, make no difference to forces and mechanics. In fact, all of mechanics, if you watch Einstein, if you aren't near a black hole and your velocities are very, very small, like even an aircraft going at 1,000
It's just all
kilometers
gibberish.
an hour, right?
David, it's just all gibberish. You know, because here's a problem.
No, my point was, if you believe that gibberish still, right?
Yeah.
You can believe that the rotundity of water around the Earth, right? Now, that's my point. Yeah, right.
But Dave, the substance, the actual substance that you want to postulate and play with mathematically tells me that that's impossible.
But have you ever seen any of Asher Shapiro's experiments just using water in a vat? Have you seen any of them?
What is it? What is it?
Well, what he did was he's a professor at MIT in fluid mechanics, right? Long time ago, 1962, and he was looking at you know, like, they'll say you've got Coriolis forces and it makes a hurricane spin anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere and all that. He said, could you demonstrate this just using the properties of water on Earth, right? And he took forever to do this, but eventually he gets a big deep vat, circular one, puts water in it, fills up with water, puts a direction kind of fluke in it, which is really just a square, and drains the water very carefully. He fills the bath up very carefully, and he lets the water be still for 24 hours. He fills it up counter to what he thinks the spin of the earth will be, right? So that he's not trying to help it. He waits 24 hours. The temperature doesn't change. He's got it all controlled on a platform, all level, and all that. And he lets the water out. 15 minutes later, the little fluke at the top starts spinning in the direction that he would estimate it would do if the earth was spinning in just the spin on the water, right?
No, but that's just him making assertions based on a presupposition.
But,
you know, but
but it is interesting. But again, no, but my point would be, why would that happen on a flat earth? I'm not saying it is actually a stationary flat earth. Why would that happen?
I'll return the question. What has that got to do with establishing the shape of the earth?
Oh no, this one would be, why is it stationary now, right? Because I mean, there's two parts to the earth, three parts actually.
But Dave, you're avoiding the point, Dave. You're avoiding the demonstrable point over and over again. Water will only take the shape of the container. The surface will form a free horizontal plane, which is equal in elevation.
I accept that in every vessel I've ever seen, right?
Right. So how can you then jump from that every practical demonstration to believing that the oceans are convex and curving?
If you could show me a 3 mile long bottle of water with a blue line on it, right, and water always on the blue line,
Dave,
I would accept your position.
Dave, that's a fallacy. Again, I'm beginning to wonder, Dave, because what you're offering me is globular cult rhetoric here, right? Now, listen, Dave. I have demonstrated the substance and its capabilities. We're talking about the physicality of the substance. It has no elasticity. It doesn't have the viscosity to be able to support shear stress. It can't mound up on itself. It can't conform to the exterior of shapes and objects. So just, what do you think is going to happen by increasing the scale? What new properties is going to happen to the water to allow it to now display convexity on the surface, Dave?
See, it's not... See, if you look at the gravitational model, it's not massing itself up in it's not doing that. It's
Dave,
not,
I don't want to be rude. Dave, I don't want to be rude, right? But I'm talking about a real demonstrable substance, and you're now jumping to conceptual mathematics. I'm not interested in concepts. What's the real?
I get one.
Listen. I'm going to entertain gravity. Okay, gravity affects objects. How?
Well, every time you've ever dropped a heavy thing, it falls towards the earth.
Right. So, in your mind, are you saying that the earth is somehow affecting this object to make it come towards it?
Well, that's the theory.
Right. Now, Dave, motion, okay? The laws of motion, demonstrable again. Acceleration and motion require a pushing force. Something must press on something else in order to make it move. So how can you have an object beneath the other one unless it's got invisible tentacles that latch onto it and wind it in, or it has invisible tentacles that go above it and press it down? How do you imagine that that's happening, Dave?
I've got no idea how that happens, though.
Because
nobody in the world knows why that happens. Nobody understands gravity. But they understand the effects of gravity.
Because it's gibberish, Dave, that's why. Because even Newton spoke about action at a distance. One object and another object with a vacuum between them, and somehow this object can make this object come towards it. That's the thinking of lunatics.
Well, he didn't believe in action at a distance, that's true. He ascribed gravity is created by God, not by him. That's his actual quote, right? And Einstein doesn't explain gravity either, right?
He doesn't
know what it is.
Do you know? You're aware of Einstein's equivalence principle?
Yes.
Right. So when you talk about gravity, I can just invert it and say it's the Earth that comes towards us.
Is it accelerating, Dale?
Doesn't matter. The maths will work out the same.
No. Is the Earth accelerating towards us?
Look, Dave.
No, it's a very, very practical question, because if you're standing on a train and the train isn't accelerating, you feel no force on your feet, right? But if the train is accelerating, you feel a force on your feet.
Yeah.
It's not upwards, of course. It pushes you to the side.
Yeah.
It's the same as when you were in your car and you drove it and you were able to move the helium balloon forward, but only when you were accelerating, right?
But that's
Only
because
when you were accelerating.
that's because I would have to postulate that we're already within a reference frame that's in motion. So in order to overcome the effects of that, we have to have continual acceleration, because we have to constantly overcome it. So, I can just play with all that stuff and say the exact same thing. And Einstein pointed it out with the equivalence principle. There is no way for an observer to tell the difference between being in a uniform gravitational field or a moving Earth. So
accelerating, not moving.
Some people say doesn't have to be accelerating.
That does. That's in the equivalence principle.
No, it talks about.
No, you're in a lift, accelerating lift. You're out in space where there's no uniform electric field, uniform gravitational field, and the lift accelerates at 1g, right? And you can't tell the difference between that and standing on a stationary lift on the surface of the Earth, right? This is his most famous. Now, if it was in uniform motion, you could actually just lie on the carriage on a train, put your feet against the back of the wall, accelerate up to 20 kilometers and take your feet away, and it wouldn't come up in pressure. It has to be accelerating.
Turn at 90 degrees. Let's go. Let's use the globe scientific instrument, right? Okay. So you're saying that I've got an object in 3D space, right? You're saying that if I've got a moving reference frame, right, that this reference frame would have to keep accelerating in order to keep in contact with this object, which is suspended in 3D space but has no direction and it has no motion. You're asserting to me that this reference frame has to keep accelerating in order to keep contact with that. No, it doesn't.
I'm not saying that. To apply pressure on it.
Well, to apply pressure on it, all it has to do is moving it. If it's going at, say, 21 miles an hour, if it continually moves at 21 miles an hour, it's going to constantly press on the object at 21 miles an hour. It doesn't need to keep accelerating to keep contact with it.
So you're saying that you can just move at uniform speed, right? And this will happen.
But because the problem is, Dave, is the examples you're giving is within the reference frame. So you're having to overcome the already existing reference frame.
I have a question about your reference frame then. So you're saying that reference frame just needs to be moving. Is that what you're saying? Doesn't need to be accelerating?
Yeah.
See, the problem if it's accelerating, Dell, is in less than a year, you'll exceed the speed of light, right?
I'm not saying that.
Now, if you're saying it just needs to move, say uniform motion, right?
Yeah.
So, Hero's a uniform motion.
What's that?
But moving at 0 miles per hour or 1 mile per hour, 2 miles per hour.
Sorry, 2 seconds. What's up? I'll get you one soon.
Right, once he's off. Right.
Once I'm finished.
Right.
Sorry, no.
Yeah, it's an interesting experiment. Like, let's say you put in multi-layered stuff in some sort of a can or container, and then you moved it. Let's say the problem is, of course, the acceleration. But let's say you accelerate up to 1 meter per second or a small amount, and you moved it, right? And then you tried it for 2 and 3, 4, and observed and seen, did it actually move, or could you tell the difference between moving at 0? One meter per second, or 2 or 3 or 4, right?
What I'm asking you here for, David, is to, we're talking within our already existing reference frame. So within this reference frame, we're talking about how objects fall, and we've got all this going on here. What I'm saying to you is we've got 3-dimensional space, right? Now here's an object, right? That object has mass and volume. It has no weight, it has no direction, it has nothing. It's just static, suspended in 3D space. Now if I bring in something that's in motion towards it going at 21 mph, then as long as that continues to move at 21 miles per hour, it's going to keep coming into contact with that. Now, because this is giving it resistance, this has a uniform weight to it, right? Because that's moving at the same uniform speed. Now, if you're within that reference frame, you now have to overcome that already thing that's already in motion. So when you're talking about lateral movement and stuff, you're always having to overcome the already moving earth beneath your feet.
It seems to. I mean, I believe it would be in contact, right? Maybe not, right? Because if it was just floating there, there's no guarantee it'd be in contact. But if it's not moving relative to the reference frame that you're moving, it eventually will contact.
And it's
it,
going
right?
to keep pressing on it. It's going to keep pressing on it.
Well, see, pressing is force, right? So if you look at Newton's second law of motion, right, you need acceleration to get force, right? And, you know, force over an area is pressure, right?
Within the reference frame.
Yeah, but there's no acceleration anywhere, Dale. So there's nothing inside the reference frame or outside the reference frame that's accelerating. So it's hard to see how a force can be generated and then a pressure.
Any motion generates force. Any motion, anything that's in motion is generate. If it comes into contact with something else, that is a force.
When it comes into contact with something else,
Exactly.
like when it stops. But if it just touched something, it wouldn't be.
No, but I'm not saying that it's touching it and then stopping. I'm saying it continually moves towards it perpetually, so it's always going to be in contact with it.
That's a good theory, but then what is the speed that the reference frame's moving at? Then do you know that?
21 mile an hour. I mean, whatever. I've got somebody that's helping me with the maths on it right now. So what I would say is that, you know,
I thought I was helping you with it, telling you that you can't have a force without acceleration.
No, you know, acceleration requires a force, and the force is always push.
Well, this is true, except of course if you believe in gravity, right? In which case it just generates from nowhere.
No, I don't.
This
That's
magical force
absurd.
appears.
That's absurd.
It is magic. Even the best physicists in the world don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is.
It's because
they
it's.
can predict
It's because it's
what
a
it might
con- it's
do,
like
but nobody knows what it
it's
is.
because it's a concept and it becomes so convoluted and complex. That's why.
Well, it's a problem when a concept becomes real. I mean, if you look at string theorists and all that, right, they're just living in fantasy land because all they're doing is coming up with very elegant mathematical models, which they think are so beautiful, they must be true.
Yeah.
But,
So the same's
you know,
true.
and-
But
none
why
of it-
can you
and none of it true
why
so
can you
far, none of
understand
it.
that? Why can you understand that but not see the same with the absurdity of a mass being able to bring another mass towards it without being attached to it in some way or applying a pressure to it?
Because of Cavendish's experiment initially, and then all the other ones. I mean, you know, there's been hundreds and thousands of these. Undergraduate physics students do them all the time, right?
Well,
I mean, it's not just done once in whatever it was, 1789 or whenever it was. It wasn't
But
done
there's-
that. It's done all the time by different groups of scientists all
but
over.
the problem
and-
is,
and
Dave, is
and-
the problem is when phenomena is then explained in a particular way. Now, what I'm saying to you is the way that it's explained, you know,
Oh, no,
is gibberish.
Very
Because
I mean,
in order to bring one
okay.
object towards another object, there must be a variance in pressure somewhere. Because you either need to alleviate pressure within a medium, or you increase pressure within a medium, or you have direct contact from one object to another. That's how motion happens in physical reality.
Except when you do these experiments, the big metal ball and the small ones move.
Have you done
I mean,
it,
it is
Dave?
magic. I mean,
Have you
you
done
look
it?
at it, and it looks like magic, but people have repeated it. You can give them people a recipe. They can go away and they can repeat it. You don't even need to tell them the answer.
So Dave,
do a double
Dave,
blind.
Dave, do you think that if I suspended myself off of, you know, the White Cliffs of Dover, that I would be attracted to the wall of the White Cliffs of Dover?
No, not from a human perception point of view.
What?
Not as a human being. I wouldn't think so.
So here we go again.
If you mean that the cliffs are going to drag your sorry ass back onto them, this is not observable.
Exactly.
It's never-
But
no
what?
one's seen it.
But why?
In fact,
But
they would
listen,
never
listen,
see it.
Dave. Listen, Dave. Because in that case, there is more mass to the side of me than there is beneath me.
Not really.
So this is the problem that globals have, right? So, you know, we talk about gravity and I say, well, you know, they talk about mass attracting mass. So a mountain range has more mass than the valley beneath it, but the water all runs into the place of less mass.
No. Because the mass they're talking about extends all the way to the centre of the Earth.
Right? But it would still be
that would
affected
be-
by the greater mass, which would be to the side of me. So why am I not being pulled in a diagonal direction?
I mean, mountains are big, but they're not as big as going through this supposedly 4,000 mile radius of the Earth.
It's
If
just
you take a column all the way down at 5.54 cubic centimeters or grams per cubic centimeter, that's a lot of weight.
so
I
we're
mean, mass. It's a lot of mass.
so we're going with the whole, you know, mass attracts mass version of gravity.
Look, I'm only saying what I've seen from experiments. It is unbelievable. I mean, as you say, Einstein didn't explain it.
What's the
You can
experiment?
believe it.
What's the experiment? Because where's the natural phenomena that you're basing your experiment on when it comes to two lead balls in a shed?
Well, just will they attract each other?
But what's it based on?
Oh, you drop a heavy stone and it goes to the earth, and then you theorize maybe mass attracts mass, and then you say to yourself, how are we going to do this on the earth? You can't get your hands around the earth and measure that, can
Right,
you?
right. So
And your son says,
here's
"Oh,
a conundrum.
I'll-
Here's a conundrum, right? Here's a conundrum because when I say to people, look, water can't conform to an object, you know, it can't stay on a ball and blah, 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 they'll say, oh, that's because the earth gets in the way, because the earth beneath it is affecting it, so the water falls off the ball and goes to the bigger mass beneath it. But yet, people that you want to assert that Cavendish and his two balls, that worked, but wait a minute, what about the earth beneath it? How did that affect them?
well, you see, he set that experiment up, what would you say, at 90 degrees to the Earth's gravitational field, if you believe in the field theory. And so all the balls were equally affected by gravity in his experiment. So basically, they all cancelled each other out on the vertical, but they didn't cancel themselves out on the horizontal.
Right.
So this was his point: was if you can remove that variable of gravity, right, going downwards,
How
and
did you
see
remove
if
it?
mass would attract itself.
How did they remove how did they remove the gravity then?
No, because they're all very close to each other.
No. How did you remove the variable of gravity that already exists there in the first place?
No, he accounted for it by the fact that all the balls were experiencing the same acceleration, if you believe the theory of gravity, right, downward. So we're all equally affected in a vector sense, right, that way. But what it didn't do is it didn't interfere with any action across the way, but it did it. They were all going down. The gravitational acceleration downwards was the same in all of them. Now, you notice that he didn't measure the balls going up and down. He measured them going across the way, right? Because now he figures that this gravitational field now is not affecting movement across the way, right? Only up and down.
How does it not affect you going across the way? If it's part
Say that
of the
again,
gravitational field, then how did you remove your experiment from the already existing gravitational field?
You can't. You can
Right, so
only,
it's rubbish then. It's total nonsense. Because you can't isolate the variable. You can't isolate it because you're already presupposing a concept and then utilising another concept within an existing concept and coming up with.
I mean that's acceptable too. I mean, you could say, well, you've assumed that you've assumed the thing and now you're measuring it, right? I mean that is you can argue that point, right?
Right. So
You need to go in a bit more detail about is that correct or not, right? Which I can't do right now because I can't actually think of an answer as to why that might be the case. But definitely, if see the assumption, not the hypothesis they had was mass attracts mass, right? Anywhere, right? Two atoms, anywhere, it didn't matter. There is no, you don't need to have a planet to have gravity, right? They're just saying you could have it anywhere. So they're saying it's vectors. So they're saying, well, we can set it up. You can add vectors together, right, and come to a conclusion about their net effect, right? So this is basically what they did. So you're assuming it is a vector, right? Gravity. It's got direction, right? I mean, if you think about how you're taught at school, they teach you potential energy is like mass times height times little g. if you look at that, they're assuming the Earth is flat. So when you went through school, you were basically taught that the Earth was flat, right? They say, what's the potential energy when you're a meter up? What's it when you're 2 meters up, right? So actually, in your school, they basically just said, if we're just looking locally, if we're not very far away from the Earth's surface, because G is only applicable when you're on the Earth's surface. When you're higher up, it's supposed to be lower.
So if you
Even if they teach you stuff at school, it's not correct, right? So the teaching you model isn't actually what might not be the case. It's just a model that works, right? So mathematically, again, it works.
But what's happened is that, you know, from the phenomena of, you know, apparently objects falling, people are then taking that and extrapolating it so that this, you know, apparent mystical force can achieve all sorts of fantastical stuff that none of us can demonstrate, recreate in any way, shape or form. So, you know, for me, it's pseudoscience and it's a religion and it only exists on the TV screen. So if I was just to ask you, you know, as a man, what could you point to that would suggest to me that the Earth isn't the way I experience it and that it's actually a curving spheroid? What would be your science that you would offer me?
Well, let's see. Well, I was out looking at whales and dolphins, right? And so we had to go out to sea for about 3 hours, right? And on the way out, we had to pass this island that you're not allowed to land on because actually this is Jarvis Bay, so it's actually a military harbour. They do ships and naval. And so you sail out and you're not allowed on this island, but there's a big sign on this island, a few metres above sea level, saying you're not allowed to land your boat here, right? So I sailed out, past it on the way out and had my binoculars. It's the ferry's not very high, so I stood on that and I said, let's see if I can see this sign when I'm 16 kilometres away from it, and can I see the boys in front of it? Sure enough, I could actually just see the top of it with my binoculars, and the boys was going right. Mm-hmm. So I mean that was something I actually planned to do. So I actually sailed away from the sign, and then the sign wasn't there. Now you could argue that it's atmospherics again, it's eyes, right? But
it is, because it's
I tend
vision.
to believe that it wasn't.
But it's vision.
It is vision, but I tend to believe that I actually could only see that part because something that looked like an ocean, the top of the waves, was actually appeared to interfere with it, right? So
you've
it
stated that
for all the world like it was the top of the
so
waves.
that's fine. I mean, that's the honest part. It's your belief. It's not a fact.
Actually, even objective science is still belief, right? I mean, you could show everybody the entire evidence on the earth that something's true, and they could just go, "I don't believe it," right?
But
Or you believe it.
experience doesn't require belief.
Well, you need to have some belief still. Like if you don't believe in direct realism, you can't investigate the
We're
world.
talking
Right?
about
So you believe
constructs.
in that.
We're talking about constructs and philosophies, though, Dave. I'm talking about physicality and direct experience. A newborn child that dies in a car accident, it doesn't have to have any beliefs. There's a definite physical reality with cause and effect relationships going on. It's regardless of men's constructs and philosophies and systems and all that rubbish. There's a physical reality that you experience and I experience, and you are subject to it. There's a cause and an effect. Do you deny that?
No, there appears to be. My experience tells me that.
So in the case of a newborn child, it has no concepts, no language, nothing, and it gets mangled in a car accident. What's going on there? Is it somehow the beliefs of the child, or is there an actual objective physical reality that it's subject to?
Well, I think it is subject to physical reality, but then you can argue the tree in the forest thing. There was no human beings other than this child. Nobody would know.
What about?
I mean, philosophically.
No, that's bollocks. You know, it's total and utter gibberish, mental
Right,
gymnastics.
you need to be an intelligence to understand the world, right? I mean, a stone can't understand the
There
world.
you go, but we're talking about intelligence and intelligence in regards to building
I mean,
building systems and constructs of interpretation. That's not what I'm talking about. The newborn child doesn't have any of that. It still is subject to physicality.
I would accept that it's subject to physicality. Most people, when they looked at the situation, would say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What happened, they would describe it the same way, right? But then, I mean, people, you look at witnesses, right, and trials, right? I mean, I haven't been any or been in court, but I can imagine that the erstwhile, like, really, we'll just say, honest people give their honest account, and the copper's going, that's 4 different accounts from 5 different people. You know, which one's right? I mean, they're all right. I mean, my point would be, when I'm talking to you, when you see your direct, what do you say, observable reality, right, and my observable reality, they may be the same, they may not be. Our interpretation of them is definitely different, right? I mean, when I go and see that apparent horizon out there, I'm thinking,
So
you shouldn't be able to see that on a flat Earth,
so
but you,
if I stood- if-
so
if
far,
you- if you-
I can't explain it,
if you,
except
if
for
you and I,
provisional.
if you and I both stood in a train track with our backs to an oncoming train going at 200 miles an hour, do you think our perceptions or, you know, interpretations or any of that stuff are relevant when that train hits us at 200 miles an hour?
No, you just die.
Right, so you can see there's a separation of mental constructs and concepts to physical reality and direct experience.
Well, there is, right, but then, as you said, we spoke about quantum mechanics earlier on, right, and that's just totally understandable by anybody, right? And that's like, so it's not in the realms of experience, but I mean, the experimenters must have been scratching their heads out when they saw the results from those experiments
But
and
what-
said,
what-
we've obviously got this wrong, lads, right?
But what experiments? Because here's the thing: if you can't experience something, how do you then devise a machine or a measuring device to interpret something that you don't even experience?
Well, you do experience stuff, but you don't perceive it, right? I mean, that's the problem. It's humans' ability to perceive stuff, right? I mean, like if the temperature in the room changed 0.05 degrees, and somebody asks you, did that temperature change? You're going to go, I don't know, right? I didn't feel any change, right? But I mean, if you had a really calibrated gauge for measuring temperature, it'll go, yeah, that changed, right? So it's to do with the human perception, right? I mean, I can understand your position. You stand there, you look out, and you see effectively a hemisphere so many miles out, and that's all you can see and all you can perceive. And then even then, you can only hear certain frequencies, you can only see certain frequencies of light, right? You can only perceive certain temperature changes and pressure changes and all that, right? So, I mean, when you look at it from that point of view, many positions are actually quite reasonable, right? It's when people say you're wrong, they're basically telling you, well, your reality and your perceptions are wrong, and you're going, no, I know what they are, right? Right, but what they should really be saying is, you're not wrong, right? But let's try and introduce something that's a bit more, say, perceptive than human senses,
That's-
right?
that's
Into
a-
the situation.
Aye, right, but that depends what you're talking about, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the most sophisticated piece of tech that we know of. Right, there's no any man-made tech that's more sophisticated than us.
I mean, if you looked at a fly, could you tell how many times its wings beats per second?
No.
But you could with a camera, and you slowed it down and counted it frame by frame.
What's the camera based on?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I've seen pictures from cameras slowed down, and people have been able to take 10,000 pictures a second.
But that's what I'm saying.
So-
But a camera's no even a fraction as sophisticated as our eye.
No, I'm just saying in this particular case for counting the number of wings of a fly. I mean, I'm not saying it's. I mean, human eye is really sophisticated, right? Cameras is nothing, but the camera's got resolution, and it can take snapshots that you can store and look at right for a long time, right? So eye doesn't do that. Unless you're some kind of what would you say? Those what do they call these people? Like the walking man, the Rain Man, and all that. Unless you're like that, right? Autistic in some way, a high functioning one, you don't have this capability, right? So I mean, instruments are really good an extension.
So-
what because otherwise we'd never know about.
You mentioned
ultraviolet.
you mentioned Euclid earlier. So are you of the position that Euclidean geometry applies to curved surfaces?
Does it? Well, not really. Spherical geometry isn't Euclidean, right?
Right, but
I mean, you set up a,
but that's not what I'm asking. Does Euclidean geometry apply to a curved surface?
I mean, can you apply it to a curved surface? Is what you mean, right? Yeah. Yes, you can. You could. Yes.
Can you?
You could.
How-
I mean, you're not going to get very good answers, but you can.
Can you?
I mean, that's why you.
Give me a
I mean, in
demonstration.
mathematics, what people do is they find very complicated things, right? And they basically come up with things like tangent planes, and they go, in the locality of this really complicated function, I can draw a plane through it, in which case I can put straight lines and points in it, and then I can apply Euclidean geometry in a very, very small area, and they can actually estimate the errors they might get when they apply Euclidean geometry. in
What about
those
the real world applications, Dave? Did you see my video that I done the other day asking about levels and plums?
Yeah, I did. I saw that one.
Right. So are you one of these people that would then think that over a meter level, a mile level, if I put a plumb line at each end of that mile level, that those two plumb lines are no longer parallel to each other?
Well, if you believe in the theory of gravity, they're both level.
I'm talking in relation to each other. Are they parallel to each other?
Well, can you measure that? How would you measure that?
That's
Have you
what
ever measured it?
we utilise it every single day. So
No,
what
no,
I'm asking,
yeah.
what
No,
I'm,
no,
I'm
you-
asking you, what your position is. We've got a mile long level, which means no deviation in elevation from one point to the
Yeah.
other, and we have two plumb lines at each end of that. Are those
Yeah.
plumb lines parallel to each other?
Now, when are you saying the road is straight, completely
A
straight and
level, a
level?
level. No deviation in elevation from any point to the other point or any point in between. At each end we have two plumb lines, one at that side and one at that side. Are the plumb lines parallel to each other, or are they no longer parallel?
Well, it depends if you following if let's say the Earth exists as a sphere. If you're just following the surface of the sphere, then they won't be parallel. If the Earth is flat, they will be.
So in reality, two plumb lines are always parallel to each other.
Short distances, you couldn't tell the difference. You know that there's errors in spirit levels, right?
Well, there's no error in water. I'm not talking about spirit level. If I used water, the most accurate levelling tool known to man, over a long distance, look, if you can check it out yourself, even mainstream will acknowledge that over a long distance, water is more accurate than a laser.
Oh, definitely. I mean, lasers. I mean,
So then we come into the
long time ago, and they do
realms.
fan out a little bit.
Then we've got to come into the realms of mathematical descriptions. What does level mean to you?
Level. It depends in what context it's in, right? It really does.
Practical use, everyday practical use for practical
Well, assuming
purposes.
gravity exists, you
No,
mean?
no
or not?
assumptions. What does level mean in the applied, real, practical world? What does level mean?
It means parallel to whichever you're looking at, right? Whichever you're looking at.
It means that any point on that line or construct will be at the equal same elevation from a starting point to any other given point on that will be at the same elevation. That's level in the real world. That's what we apply in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, like that would certainly agree with. I mean, it's a narrow concept, the level, but yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
So are canals level?
What canals? I doubt they are.
So is a canal curved?
I would think it would be.
Dave, look, you're entitled to your beliefs. I just find them absurd. I mean, how a rational man? I mean, because you seem.
I mean, that's why I really only wanted to talk to you about one point, right? Which was, why did we see a distinct horizon, right? And you haven't convinced me with the tunnel and going down to the one point, and even on the level one,
Dave,
you haven't convinced me.
let's get back then.
Yeah,
Right? Let's get back, Dave. Let's get back.
Sure.
Let's get back. Right. So we've talked about the train tracks, right, and they appear to converge. Now let's put that the other way. Let's have a train track here and a train track here. So we've got one there and we've got one there. Now as they go away from us, right, what appears to happen? The gap between the two of them, what appears to happen to that gap as it goes away from us, Dave?
Well, it'll narrow. And eventually, when you get out past the, was it the rally to, what was it?
Relative.
There's a limit, the diffraction limit, right?
And they'll appear to converge. They'll appear to converge to one line, right?
Yeah.
So let's postulate that the sky and the floor are both parallels, and as they go away from you, they appear to converge due to your vision.
I would believe that if you can tell me how far away the horizon is.
But this is the problem. It's only an apparent. It's,
You see, the train
Dave,
track thing only works when you go to.
how can I
I
tell you how far away the horizon is when it's only a visible phenomena? It's not a physical thing.
Yeah, but you're trying to convince me that the reason why we see the two is because they're really the one and it's discernible. I'm not believing that.
Well, what happens? What happens?
How
Dave,
far away it is,
Dave,
and you
what
can
happens?
compute the
Dave,
angular distance
Dave,
between-
what happens? What happens when you look along the train tracks?
Well, they look as though they converge.
Right, so you understand it from there, and what I'm saying to you is just turn them 90 degrees so they're not like that, looking at them going away from you like that.
Yeah, if I look along 3 meters of the train tracks, they'll still look as though they converge, but it's easily seen they aren't the same point, right? Now, if I look down at probably something like several miles or a mile or two, my eyes cannot tell the difference because they cannot resolve more than one arc of angle during the daytime.
Right, so
Once
it's the same.
these two train tracks appear to be within one arc, I can't tell that they're two distinct things.
Right, and so the same
Yeah.
then with the ground and the sky. It's the same
Could
principle.
we first prove that where the horizon is, and then we can see whether
I'm
that's true?
not making an assertion that the horizon's a physical geometric thing, so
No,
I don't need to prove
no,
it.
but I mean, this disappearing into, forever. I mean, like, it needs to go forever. I mean, if it doesn't go beyond what you can resolve with your eye, you could see the difference between them. You could see a gap. So you need to prove that it's far enough away that you can't see it.
But that's what happens, that's my experience, and again, what we're talking about here is the geometry of
Now,
vision.
that's your explanation of it,
But
though,
Dave,
right?
Dave,
We both
Dave,
see the same thing.
no,
We
Dave.
both see a line.
Dave, I've got a separation because I'm separating the two. I understand the geometry of the world that I move around in 3 dimensions is separate from how I perceive it with my vision. So when we're talking about purely visible phenomena, it's a property of the vision. It's not a property of the 3D tangible world. So it's a separate discussion. That's a discussion about vision, not about the shape of the earth.
I'm still not convinced that your explanation for the horizon and the sea coming up and the sky coming down and they're all just the one, right? And it's only just a.
I'm
It's
not
only
offering
just
it, Dave.
a trick of the eye.
Dave, don't misconstrue or misrepresent me. I'm not offering you a definite answer. What I'm saying to you is look, if you try and find, any real mapping of human vision and how it actually functions, it doesn't exist. So it's an ongoing investigation, which is why conversations are useful. I'm not making any definite assertions about what's happening in regards to your vision. It's the globe that's making assertions about what's happening and omitting vision from the factor. Okay, and that's what I'm continually pointing out. So you can't misrepresent me because I'm not making any assertions.
I don't mean to. I mean, actually, it comes to another point when I actually wrote to you because I didn't want to blindside you. I don't think we share the same objective reality, right? It's clear we don't, right? I mean, well, I look out there and I see a discernible line, and I disagree with what the proposition you put forward, not your actual belief, but an explanation as to what it could be.
I'm not offering you a definite proposition.
Explanation
Dave,
for describing what
Dave.
it is different. So obviously, ultimately, our objective reality.
I'm not offering you a definite explanation or any of that stuff.
You made that clear. I
Right.
accept that.
Right, so that's what I'm
You
saying.
just posited a possibility.
Aye, but we're discussing an unknown, definition and proper mapping of human vision and how this functions. Because it's not there, it's not mapped properly, there's nothing that we can refer to see it as a whole, right? So it's an ongoing investigation. It's a separate issue from the 3-dimensional world that we move around in. Now, to say that your objective reality is different from mine, it's preposterous. Because
I don't think so.
no, it is because your interpretation based on vision may be different from somebody else's, but you and that other person are still subject to physicality, like in case in point, stand with your back on a train track to an oncoming 200 miles an hour
didn't-
locomotive, you're going to both get turned into mince.
I did not say that it was 100% different. It could be just a fraction, right? It's mostly in the interpretation, right? And as I said, I mean, you could have witnesses and two cars crashed into each other. What happened, right? And they give different explanations. Well, what they actually saw. Now, the physics, when the cops go down and measure it and all that, they'll say, this is what must have happened no matter what these guys said, right?
Yeah.
That's what they'll say on the
That's right.
report, because otherwise they're breaking the laws of physics, which we don't believe is possible, but of course always could be. You know, if there's a hand of God out there actually moving everything, then there are no laws, right? It's just all, he's always being consistent, right? Well, I mean, but we do. In the margins, we must disagree, right? Because people disagree about things, right? And
course.
especially interpretations.
But you know, you can't disagree with me that if you breathe in water, you're going to die. If I set you on fire, you're going to burn. If I throw you off the top of a building, you're going to get fucking minced when you hit the ground at the bottom. If you stand in front
I
of
don't disagree with any of them.
Right, well that's what I'm saying. There's a separation between that, and this is the problem when it's only visible phenomena. It's subject to interpretation, and it varies and changes, and it's inconsistent. So it should never be utilised as a proof, say, of anything because it's inconclusive.
You know, you can't prove anything in the real world with experiments anyway, Del, right? I mean, even you can't because that would mean that as soon as a theory was proven, it could never be disproven, right? So then people who believe that Newton was correct, right, could never believe that Einstein was correct, right? They could never do it, right? And even in then, when they detect the Higgs boson, they're only doing that to 5 sigma, which means there's a 1 in 3.5 million chance, according to them, that they could be wrong, right?
So without any,
still-
but without any man-made instruments, the natural world shows me that water flows down gradients. Water collects in a void, and if it can't find a gradient, it's going to fill up and it's going to take the shape of the containment and it's going to form a free horizontal surface. That's the real world. That's demonstrable. That's everybody's experience.
Don't disagree with that at all. But suppose that our senses, right, could extend, say, 100 miles. We could somehow magically see everything as it was within 100 miles of where we were, right? Your objective reality might be different than what you think it is now, right? That'd be my hypothesis, right? Because we're only just limited to a few kilometers maximum, actually. If you think about it, I'm in a room now and it's only a few meters. That's it. But if you really could send stuff somehow with another sense over a long distance, our rally might be different.
I would need cartoon telescopic eyeballs that can elongate out past my skull to be able to see beyond, you know, whatever we think's going on.
So what I'm saying is that there is a limit to what you can understand about the natural world just through, like,
Vision.
human perception. We've gone through the fact that you can't detect, not you, but anybody, can't detect a small pressure difference, small temperature difference, small changes in wavelengths of light, right? Small amounts of sound changing, right? Nothing. I mean, there's definite limits in there. Even though the brain is probably the best 3 kilograms, the most complex thing in the universe that we know of. But we definitely have. I hope there's aliens out there, but I hope they don't come anytime soon. It'll be like what's that? Independence Day, man.
The world's full of fucking aliens already, Dave. Fuck's sake, you know how they look. Fucking hell, man. They're all running about with face masks and fucking all sorts on.
Oh, yeah. The world's upside down, really. I mean, like, if you look at it, because I watch a lot of American cable TV, right? The news programs, and I think I know more about their politics than the Australian ones. And it's just, they think they're an exceptional nation, and it's costing them dearly. Instead of the United States, it's the disunited States. There's 50 countries over there that can't agree on anything. I mean, they're gone, man. They're gone. I thought Britain was bad, but anyway, Del, that was a good talk.
Right.
I didn't want to say you're wrong or anything. I'm just pointing out that maybe we're different.
Listen, Dave,
And
I think you're a credit to this kind of discussion. And this is exactly what we're looking for. It's like there doesn't have to be animosity. Things might get a wee bit. Things can get tense in communication, and when we're trying to speak to each other. And obviously, you're wise enough not to be triggered and react to that and start acting the victim. So I really appreciate somebody like yourself that's got the ability to just sit here and continually chat it out, because you're displaying real honesty and integrity, and I have to thank you for that, mate. So.
Well, I have to thank you too. I mean, like, I've seen a lot of the flat earthers, like Nathan Oakley, it's just a joke. Lying. Well, I don't like to call people that, but he is one, right? But I've always thought that you've been real. You did believe all this stuff, Dell. I try to understand why you did, and then I thought maybe I should just talk to Dell and see why he thinks it the way he does. I mean, you obviously don't monetize anything here, right?
Yeah.
So you're not doing it because, and I don't think you need the fame. So why are you doing it? I mean, it must be you just want the message to get out there, right?
What do you honestly think of my position? What do you think of the position that I stand on?
Well, I think that if you, when I actually wrote this, which you probably never saw before, that if you use direct realism and you only accept things which you can perceive, right, by your senses or whatever.
No, that's a misrepresentation. What I can experience, where's the practical references? So
okay, let's do all that.
I can't perceive here, but
what you can discern through common sense, right, is what you're going to believe, right? So you look at it and you go, it doesn't make any sense, right? So you'll say, well, I don't believe that, or if it appears to agree with common sense, you'll say, I believe this, right? So, I mean, like, I thought about putting myself in that position, and I would probably come to the same conclusion you do. That, the Earth does look demonstrably flat, that these theories, as I've said, like the theory of quantum mechanics, man, I've been looking at that. And I mean, I could solve the equations and all that and, expand out Schrodinger's equation and, perturbation theory and all that, and try and solve simpler ones. But I mean, it doesn't make it real, right? I mean, the results they claim published seem to suggest that, if we follow this model, it agrees with results. That doesn't mean it's true. So, I mean, a normal human being would never ever believe any of this. And same with gravity. I mean, as you said, who believes it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody believes it. They only believe the results they think they get from the models. So I think if I put myself on your shoes, I think it could be a reasonable position. But I think that maybe you should...
well, my position is...
You could challenge some of your positions which you believe to be true.
My position is always a practical reference, not just common sense. It's a practical reference. Where's the physical demonstration of the thing, the substance, and the claimed behaviours? That's where I start from. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's the only position that any rational person should start from. I thought about all different things. We can look at the sky. We can look at clouds being lit up from underneath, right, when the sun's setting. And like you say, well, yes, they fit the model, but like, does it really prove that the one thing that that Asher P. Was it Shapiro, when he did, because you were always talking about the natural properties of water, with that vat of water, and he puts it and he does it from latitude 42, and it's been done all over the world. And there's an article says it's been done 87 times by different people, and the water rotates as expected, right? And he's not looking at the sky. He's in a room, elevator with it controlled. It's not a hurricane where you can't be in the middle of it and control. He's controlling everything. So he's done like a proper scientific experiment, and yet the results, it's like, as I said, looking at why do we see the discernible, horizon? And it struck me, why is this water spinning in different directions in different hemispheres, right? And he demonstrates it in a video that he did for his students. So it's actually part of a lecture. Does they talk about the structure and the shape of the containment that he's got it in?
Yeah, he's got that. Yeah, he's got it in a big.
Is it precision? Is it precision so that there's no possibility for flow to go a particular way?
I mean, that's it. And he actually struggled for like a couple of weeks to remove all the extraneous sense, because like if you never had a perfectly circular deep container, looks like a bit like a cylinder, really a really deep cylinder, he says that it doesn't work either, because the force induced on these things is like a millionth or a billionth, right? And you have to wait a long time for it to, just like a car, if you were accelerating at 0.0001 miles per meters per second, you'd need to wait a long time before you saw the car moving. So he does an experiment with that, right? And he says, well, it's accumulating like an integral, right? And eventually it becomes big enough to observe, right? It's not very strong at all, right? And there's lots of reasons why this might not be true, right? So you need to dig into, like, why is that the case?
Well, you can send me a link to that, and I'll try and recreate it myself.
I'll send you a link.
But the fact is that the water needs a container, gas needs a container. These things are demonstrable. So water can only take the shape of the container. It can't be complex.
It does in this container also. He's actually just looking at the flow. But I mean, like you could. I mean, like, even just in general science, if you've ever looked at it, because you'll say, well, peer-reviewed is the gold standard, best we got, but experiments often aren't conducted properly, right? Peer reviews aren't done properly either, right? I mean, there was these people in, what was it, CERN or something, and they made some assumptions and mistakes, and they thought they discovered new particles.
Well, why don't you?
Enough statistical analysis, and some other groups had to spend,
Why don't you peer review my tests on water that are done based on a natural phenomena observed in the natural world, and then predictions made and messing with variables and coming to the conclusion? Why don't you peer review that and see what you can demonstrate?
Well, I'm not sure I can demonstrate, but I'll have a look at it. Right?
If you can't demonstrate it, do you not think there's a problem with that?
What, demonstrating?
You can't demonstrate.
No, I can demonstrate some things, but basically I'm pretty lazy, Del. So, I mean, I'm like, this is just a bit of a hobby. I mean, I normally just read maths books and stuff now that I'm retired, right?
Aye.
And I watch the odd YouTube video, but I mean, I watched Nathan Oatley for about 5 minutes and listened to him talking about not apparent size. It goes, what, like when you get a little model ship and it says not apparent, not actual size, right, on a box, because you read like that when he's trying to, sophistry around apparent size in the sky, right? Not actual size. Because you see that on the model kits, like, don't be, this is nonsense, right? Because he tries sophistry all the time, and he just lies.
I don't know what you're talking about, because I don't pay much attention at all, so I couldn't comment.
I used to listen to it because I found it like absurd, the things he was saying. So I found it entertaining. No, nothing he said made any sense. But I mean, you couldn't even grasp a concept and say, could I turn it to something I want to think about, right? Mm-hmm. And you go, no, just all lies, and pay me more money. Pay me more money.
Well, I'm always suspicious of people taking money, but you should come back. Hopefully one day when Gav's on, I'm pretty sure Gav would enjoy a wee discussion with you, as well. So,
yeah.
Aye, you should do that, Dave. But again, I appreciate you coming on and displaying the mannerisms that you've displayed. Because I think you're a credit. Well, regardless of what you believe in, you don't have to be antagonistic.
My mother said I'm very patient. It took me, because she's like really old and I try to get her to use the internet. It took me 45 minutes to get her to connect to a broadband. And it took me 10 minutes to get her to find the shift button on our software, the keypad, right? And she goes, oh, you're patient. And Mother Burroughs hit the roof. Are you stupid? He's going, are you stupid? Of course, that kind of attitude just drives people away, right? You just have to be very patient, right? And accept that other people might be right, and that there's reasons why they can't do stuff, or the reasons why they have the position they have, right? And you just have to try and understand it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'll catch you later. I'll maybe come on another time. You've got my email, so you can just send me one if you're interested in some stuff, if there's some discussion on something you might want to do. Of course, it's like 6:45 now. The sun should have come up, so it's really cold here. I mean, people think Australia's warm all the time. It's like 4 degrees in winter, but it heats up really quickly. It'll be 17 degrees and sunny, probably by about 11 o'clock, right? So
fucking lucky you. Oh.
I think I sent you an email and I said that when it gets to about August, September, you're picking the day when you're going to leave your jacket in the house until May next year, right?
Aye.
And you don't wear a jacket, right? So this is the life. I wear shorts maybe like 6 months a year, but well, people just wear shorts all year. When I came here, it was 16 degrees. I went down to the beach and t-shirt and shorts and all that, and the Australians is all wrapped up and all right, still that. I'm going, the sun's shining at 16 degrees, the sun's great, this is great, right? They're all looking at me and thinking, he's just off the boat, right?
Spot the Scottish cunt. Spot the Scottish cunt. The sun's out and it's fucking freezing. Taps off.
Exactly, 16 degrees. I'm going, oh, it's hot, it's hot, it's hot.
Oh, you've obviously become accustomed to it then.
Oh, it gets super warm, but I mean, I've got aircon and all that ducted and stuff, and
Aye.
it costs a fortune. But then I got solar heating on to, clean the pool and put the air in, so it's okay.
Aye,
So-
good.
Well, I'll catch you again, Dale. Just I'll send you
worries.
an email now and again. You can send me stuff, and I'd be happy to come back on the show again, as you say. It doesn't need to be confrontationist. You can actually disagree with still being civil.
Exactly. Exactly, man.
Okay. Catch
Cheers.
you later then, Dale.
Take it
Right.
easy,
Cheers.
See you later, mate. There you go. See, regardless of people's, opinions on the position, for me it's a breath of fresh air because, at least Dave has got the ability to sit there without, constant undermining and antagonising of fucking low life pish. So don't know what that is, MME holes. Dave did have a backbone, Tam Reid, you're right. Right, where we at? Let's see. Alright, Steve, you've sent me the images, no worries. Professor Phil Bell. Listening to your show today leads me to conclude that you are of the opinion that there is a demarcation point between atmosphere and what we call space. No, Dave, Phil, understand that it's just gradual. It's just gradual, just less and less and less and less and less and less. Fact is not the official account of space being a vacuum is highly misleading. We often measure the gas concentration of the atmosphere even far beyond what is the arbitrary place called the Kármán boundary. Phil, you don't measure anything like that. There is no fixed boundary. The gas concentration, blah blah blah, has not changed significantly beyond that point. As you head back to Earth, it's simply a function of more gas and less space. The greatest concentration, hence pressure at sea level. If you're referring to that, that's what's going on. The gradient's about the weight of the mass. As you move upwards, it doesn't mean that there isn't any mass there. There's just less weight due to, no the same amount above you bearing down. It's about a column. As you know, barometric pressure is simply the force applied by the column of gas above an area of 1 square inch, hence pound force, blah blah blah. There's no practical limit to the height of the column. However, there is, because it depends on the scale, the gauge of your instrument. What's its limitation? Because obviously it's at 14 and it can only go to fucking 0. But as I say, if I've got a column, say you were measuring my weight, my pressure on a scale, right? And I took an infinitesimal fucking slice after tapping my scalp, then I placed the scales there and put that wee slice on. These scales would need to be really, really, really precisioned to be able to detect that wee bit. It doesn't mean that there isn't any stuff there. By the time you reach 60 miles, there is too little to be significant. Aye. Mass bearing down. Once you're beyond the influence of Earth, then it makes no difference at all. You're just using circular reasoning and basing things on presuppositions and assumptions here. Phil, you're always starting from the position it's a globe Earth and then trying to explain your concept. That's not what reality shows you. Phil Bell. What do you need to create pressure? What do you need to create a vacuum? What is the relationship between the two when you put them together and remove the partition wall? Phil, demonstrate. We're talking about physicality, real physical reality and how things actually function. Not just looking at an image and then presupposing your image is real and trying to give you explanations about it. I'm not interested. Any one of you blocked. You talk utter shite, Phil. Can't be bothered reading the rest of it. Ular Alfred. Could I call on to your stream please, thanks. Hi, it's been 59 minutes and I am bored, thanks. I don't really like pushy, demanding, needy fuckers. Ular, I'll send you a link. You better have something decent to say after that fucking performance. Right? You could quite clearly see I was in the middle of speaking to somebody. It's not a very good start. There you go, Ular Alfred. Further exploring a follow-up possible explanation concerning gravity or air pressure, which is more dense objects create when in motion. Alex, you need to wait to see what happens here. What time are we on? 10 to 10. Scott, still heavy rain in Irvine, but it's hot rain. The kids are out enjoying it, looked up for weeks, big man. Does anyone blame the kids? I know, mate. It's fucking shit. At least the rain's a bit warmer. I know these people, they message you that same gibberish all the time. I think this is it's the trait of a liar. You know, they hope that if they just keep asserting it over and over and over again, eventually you're going to just go, alright then, I believe your gibberish. Demonstrations, Phil. No words. Where's the demonstrations? Same to all globe proponents and anybody out there. Make assertions and claims about physicality, reality. Where's your practical reference? When all practical references show me something contrary to your assertion, then I'm not going to throw out all practical reference and experience to, favour an image and a concept. That's where you're going wrong, globe believers. You're hell-bent on maintaining your belief in a fucking image that you can taught and entertain all sorts of mental gymnastics and sprinkle it with word salads left, right and centre just to try and fucking cling on to it. You can demonstrate what beyond the real curve. There's somebody that thinks they're fucking smart. Curving the earth is imaginary. That's why this platform's called Beyond the Imaginary Curve. Because it is imaginary. It doesn't exist. Bendy oceans and all that, you fucking Fruit Loop.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, my microphone. Oh, I was just going to ask, is it your birthday?
Sees me pricks. Sees we fucking toffee rich boys again. We fucking cum eaters, man. Stop phoning my partner and fucking harassing women and children, you creepy wee weirdos. knew it was the wee fucking fuckwits. You can tell. Been waiting an hour. We self-entitled fucking delusional half-wits. Right, Alex. Link sent, Alex. This will probably be the last one. If I've missed any, then I do apologise. Now you carry on and demonstrate the globular earth, that's what we do.
Hey Dale, Alex here from the US, which is now currently falling apart, unfortunately. Yeah, I just wanted to ring back in. Thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate it. I was watching the experiment that you did, showing the objects having an impact on pressure when it's in motion. Well, the first thing I wanted to say is, yeah, thanks. First, number one is I am sincere. I really appreciate coming back and engaging with these ideas. I'm learning a lot. I'm very novice, so a lot of these concepts are new. So hopefully you can have patience with me there. But one of the key things there that I noted is when it comes to but I just wanted to. You teased out these. So when I encounter folks who are proponents of the globe model, and they put forward all of these, like you said, all of these other non-related concepts such as gravity to explain these globes, right? They're not related, and that helped clear up my thinking as far as okay, this is not related because frankly there is no curvature which is measurable, and but yeah, so that was number one.
Gravity just translated to layman means things fall, and the way in which things fall. That's all it means.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so that it's just really helpful to tease all of those things out because everything gets globbed together and confusing, right? When you start muddying the waters like that. So that's been really helpful. So, but I just come back. I wanted to just ask your thoughts on the experiment itself. So one of the major things that proponents of the globe theory put forward is this idea that, okay, we're spinning thousands and thousands of miles and all this other nonsense that's happening with the globe theory. But the fact is that they claim that we're spinning round and round, right? Mm-hmm. This planet is, well, one of my criticisms of that is that if that was true, then we should be able to measure that motion. And it's just simply not measurable. They've made this silly experiment where they hang like a plumb bob or a pendulum or something, and from a really tall height to see if you can see that object go round and round, or they kick it off. They basically cheat the experiment and kick. You know what I'm talking? I don't know. I can't remember the name of the.
Foucault.
Yes, thank you. Anyway, that has been proved to not be accurate. It's not measuring any motion of the Earth whatsoever, and so. The same criticism I would deliver to that, I would only have a slight concern for this notion that the Earth, quote unquote, to explain why things fall and the pressure, as you were demonstrating, is I don't know if we can measure necessarily, unless your experiment is measuring that. I mean that we can measure necessarily the Earth moving up to explain. You know what I'm saying? That's my only.
It's what I'm utilising is demonstrations of how we can have direction. Density layers. An upward buoyant force, because that displays it. But again, I can't make the assertion that that's what's happening with the Earth. All I'm utilising is to show there's other ways that are pursuing, these thoughts. And just as we're talking about the equivalence principle of Einstein, there's no way for a person within a uniform gravitational field or something moving at a constant velocity that both scenarios would be the same conditions, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So it's a conundrum there. But again, that's the problem when we jump into red herrings about objects falling, because it's got fuck all to do with the shape of the Earth. the way in which an object falls doesn't define the Earth's shape. You know.
Right, and that drives it home. That should be the nail in the coffin on that matter, honestly, at least on that piece. And then the other item I wanted to bring up was, in the States anyway, we have access to like some really large deserts. And what I was thinking is, I think it would be a good idea. I'm sure this experiment has been done before, but I think it'd be a great demonstration. One of the main limiters that we face when we try to measure no curvature is humidity or air particles getting in the way of our line of sight, right?
I had this discussion with you before. When we're talking about these types of things, you're talking about vision, visible.
Right.
So you have to be able to quantify that, right? If you're going to use that. I don't use that. I use a substance. Substance is known as water. It has definite physical features and properties and behaviours that we can test over and over and over and over and over again. You can repeat it. You can pass it on to the next person. They can repeat it. The water is no convex. You cannot have a standing body of water on a gradient like a slope without it flowing. These things are demonstrable. So,
right. I think water's a good, but I was just thinking if there's, so you're saying that there's a flaw. Well, I guess just to put this example experiment out there, a good demonstration is if you used a high power laser and you were to do it in a desert and you had a target, right? Like you could fire up the laser and then it would hit the target, let's say, I don't know, potentially, a mile away, and then you could keep repeating that.
How are you gonna remove the air between you and the object, because the laser is light and it's going to be subjected to the influence of the air and the moisture content and all that stuff. So here's a better one for you, Alex. Is it Alex?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, Alex. Right, we've got a standing body of water. Right, we've got two standing bodies of water. We'll say that's the one here at the top, and we've got one here at the bottom. Right, so what we do is we build a plumb construct at one end. Okay, so it's perfectly plumb. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to add a piece onto that first piece so that the second piece is relative to the first piece. The second piece is perfectly squared to the first piece, and we continually construct that outwards. Like, can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, so it's basically a very long aqueduct. Is that your idea?
Right, so what I'm saying to you is that the first position is the relative position. This is the starting point. So each thing that we apply onto that is perfectly squared all the way out. Now what would happen on a curved earth is we would start with that same bit, then we would make that bit square, next bit square, next bit square, next bit squared, next bit squared, next bit squared. Can you see what's starting to happen? Next bit squared, next bit squared, next bit squared. What's happening? We're getting an increase of the gap between the construct and the body of water. If you wanted to go that far, I don't need to get that elaborate to understand the behaviour of the water that I'm looking over, that it's no convex. But if you wanted to, just get rid of lasers and all that shit, 'cause there's too many variables that can affect it. Build a solid construct where every piece is machine precisioned, square relative to the next one, and keep building it over a mile. And what should happen is that you should have an increase of 8 inches or 7 point whatever inches from there to there.
Right, so that the height of each post as you're building this channel across.
Never mind that you can make posts to support, but what's important is that the pieces that you're making square to the first piece remain squared all the way. So they're perfectly aligned, perfectly squared, perfectly level with each other. And as you do that, extending out over a still, calm body of water, what should start to happen is that the gap between the bottom of it and the water should start to increase as you go outward. If you wanted to do that, that's a much better test to be doing than try to use lasers.
Interesting. Is there a name for this test? Because I want to record, because I think it's something that I would be willing to discuss with others.
I don't know if it's called the rectilinear. I can't remember, but I don't need to get a name. You understand the principles of what I've just described.
Right,
So-
right. And how would the Globus dismiss that? Would they just simply say, well, the gap isn't going to exist as you continue out because of the magic of gravity?
No,
I mean,
because
how would they dismiss it?
you can't dismiss it because each piece would be built perfectly levelled and squared to your initial piece. So as you go out, that precision is there. Each piece is perfectly square to the other one. And
Right.
you build it out. So it's a physical construct. It's no subject to magic stuffs and mathematical concepts. It's definite physicality. And the geometry of the globular earth dictates that if you've done it over a mile, there should be an increase of almost 8 inches from your starting position
Right.
to your end position.
Right. I think that would be way more reliable than using lasers. I agree.
Of course it would.
Okay.
But that's,
Yeah, like
but what I've just described to you is the principles of construction, plums, levels, square. That's what we utilise, you know, in everyday existence. And these principles wouldn't apply to a curved surface. Nothing would work. Plumb lines and levels wouldn't work on a curved surface.
right. And isn't the same true in some ways? Isn't this already demonstrated by miles and miles of railways? Because wouldn't they have to factor in some kind of? I mean, I know it's a little different because these railways aren't necessarily square extending out, but you would have to factor that in eventually, no?
All right, well, you know, stuff like that, warps and bends, and they would just say, but their pieces are so minute that they'll just fall on the curve of the earth, and it's no that much, you know, each section wouldn't be that great that you would have to account for it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this seems to me, and you wouldn't only you would have to go out what 1 mile to demonstrate that 8 inches. That's all we would
Even
need.
half a mile there should be, what, half of that? 4 inches.
Okay, half a mile. Okay, this is interesting. I think it's something that a lot like I could probably start getting something like that going in the States. And like for example, in New Mexico, I have a lot of buddies there that'd be willing to, and they have access to that much land and materials. I think it'd be worthwhile just to capture it and then demonstrate.
Yeah. Well, you go for it, mate. You go for it.
Yeah, and then finally, if you don't mind, just one more item. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. This is not really related to much, so I'd understand if you want to dismiss it. I get it, but it's concerning this long line of tradition of you look at historical thinkers going all the way back to Galileo, the heliocentric folks. Why is it? I mean, I'm sure you've touched on it before, so apologies if you have, but. Why is it that they all seem to be acting in concert in the tradition of Freemasonry? I don't know why that is. Maybe that's not of any concern, but I just don't. It is hard to overlook that a lot of the glow proponents have been in that tradition. I don't understand why that.
Well, there is. I mean, there's a lot of secretiveness and you know, self-interest groups. And as I said before, you know, to just try and pin it on one specific group would be an injustice. Because, you know, liars and deceivers and manipulators will disguise themselves with any robe. So there's loads of factions and self-interest groups out there that perpetuate bullshit and lies in order to receive funds and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, as I say, you know, all these people that we have, we're showing drawings of supposed characters that lived 400 and 500 years ago and 2,000 years ago, and you know, asserted that this is their works and yada yada yada. I can't account for any of that, mate. I just take it with a pinch of salt, and it really doesn't mean anything to me. I live now. What's relative and relevant is now. That's where we exist. So how are we going to establish and find out these things? You know. So
Right. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. It is. I think you can get lost into that conspiratorial mindset of just continuously trying to unwind all of these factions and their interest. And anyway, it's really not as helpful as what we just talked about. So yeah, I think that was it. And so and then just as a closing, in terms of with a very practical, with all the practical model, the practical approach that we're taking here with the definitions of weight, mass, and pressure, without gravity, just very simplistically put, could you lay it out for beginners? Like what is the definition of weight? What is the definition of mass, and also pressure?
Weight is the amount of pressure that something applies to something else. You need a resistance factor, so something has to press on something else that can resist it. Mass has no weight and has no direction. There has to be a factor for that. An object with mass and volume doesn't have anything. Doesn't have direction.
Okay,
It doesn't have weight.
So very clearly, weight then cannot exist unless there's something in motion,
Exactly.
aka pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. And this is why you performed that experiment of those objects in the vehicle, right? You were trying to demonstrate that
Well,
this apparent weight can't exist unless either something is acting on the objects. And so that's why you posited potentially either the Earth is moving or something is in motion to explain weight.
it was simple.
So
if you just play a thought experiment and you take any object and imagine yourself that it's just suspended in 3-dimensional space. Well, the object has volume, it has form, it has a density, right? There's a certain mass to the object. So what are you going to need to bring in order to give it weight and give it direction?
you have to apply motion, force of some kind,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. So you have to bring
Okay.
in something else that can come into contact with it. So now you've got the resistance, and depending on how fast that's moving is going to determine what your weight is, because weight's no something that's within the object. An object, there's no something in there I can pull it and go, oh, there's its weight. It's no something that's a property of it. It's just something that we define, based on the stuff that we design. But in the thought experiment, it doesn't have any weight. What we interpret as weight would be something coming into contact with it, resisting it and pressing against it. And if it's gone, 20 miles an hour, then it's going to have a set weight. If it comes in and touches it and it's gone 60 miles an hour, it's going to have a different weight. You can see that if you go in an elevator. Stand on scales in an elevator and you'll see maybe you're 14 stone or whatever you are. Press the button to go upwards. As soon as you hit that and it starts to move, your weight will increase for a split second. And
So in a way, we can measure this force. We can't. So in effect, weight is the measurement of the force, right?
it's how much it's pressing on it.
Okay. So then that makes sense. It's just
Like
I
force.
I just expected. Can we take some instrument out there and measure this force? If supposedly in this hypothetical the Earth is moving up as a force, what kind of instrument can we use to detect it? Right? And why is it that if I get into an elevator, I'm going to get sick if I go really.
No, the thing is if you look at their stuff and gravity and how it pulls, right? Pull is not a factor. It's not a mechanism to create motion, right? So the whole point in that regard is to show that, when we're talking about motion and acceleration, something has to be pressing something else. That's how you make motion and acceleration happen. I forget where I was going there. I forget the point, but
Yeah, I was just saying it's like in the same way that we can't detect this supposed quote unquote globe that's spinning. That's obviously nonsense. But it's like, well, can I also detect this force that's moving the Earth up to explain the weight of all these objects?
no, because
right?
you'd have to be away from the reference frame, and that's what Einstein's equivalence principle was showing. In a uniform
Okay.
gravitational field or being on an Earth that was moving towards us, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Okay, because this is our current frame of reference, so we can't detect that unless. But we can travel obviously horizontally and imitate that, but our bodies will feel it. But if it's okay. So I'm going to have to study that more. It sounds like I need to study that principle more to fully understand it and come back to it. But yeah, that's really it. Thanks for laying all that out.
No worries, mate.
Thanks. See ya.
Cool. Right, people. Off-ski parts. I had a couple of other things that Andrew had sent and Mero had sent. I'll cover them the next time. Andrew, I did get your link to that. What else have I missed? No, I think that was it. Right, cheers everybody. I'll see you all very soon. Take care.